A scream cut through the dusty air in Copper Creek that afternoon. It broke the usual sounds of horses, hooves, and wagon wheels. Someone help. He can't breathe. The noise came from Wilkins' general store. It pulled in a small crowd of people who stood unsure at the door. Inside, a big guy lay spread out on the rough wood floor. His face was a scary purple color. His big hand grabbed at his chest. His fingers dug into his shirt like he was trying to pull off something you couldn't see. "Where's Doc Lawrence?" someone yelled. "He rode out to the Sullivan Ranch this morning. Won't be back till sundown." The storekeeper's wife twisted her hands. "Have mercy. What do we do?" Abigail Winters had been putting medicine bottles on the shelves in the clinic across the street when she heard the noise. She stood still by the window, watching as more town folks gathered. Her fingers squeezed tight around the small brown bottle of laudanum she'd been holding. "Go!" a voice inside her pushed. "You know what to do." But her feet stayed stuck to the floor like they were made of lead. 3 years of helping Doc Lawrence had taught her to spot the signs of a heart attack. 3 years of watching, learning, soaking up every medical book in the doctor's small library. 3 years of keeping her thoughts to herself. The bottle shook in her hand. Mr. Jameson. That was who lay dying on the floor of Wilkins' store. The same Mr. Jameson who tipped his hat to her just this morning as he passed the clinic. The same Mr. Jameson who'd complained of arm pain last week, which Doc Lawrence had brushed off as rheumatism. Before Abigail really knew what she was doing, she had put down the laudanum bottle and was crossing the street, her skirts bunched in her hands. The crowd moved apart slowly as she came near, whispers following behind her. "Doctor's girl just sweeps floors." "Strange quiet thing." Abigail knelt next to Mr. Jameson, her shaking hands reaching for his wrist to feel his pulse. It fluttered under her fingers like a dying bird. "What do you think you're doing?" Mrs. Jameson showed up above her, her face twisted with fear and anger. "Don't you touch him." Abigail opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her throat closed up like it always did when too many eyes turned her way. "Get away from him!" Mrs. Jameson screamed, shoving Abigail aside. "She's just the girl who sweeps the clinic. She's not a doctor." Abigail stumbled back, her cheeks burning. She watched without being able to help as Mr. Jameson's breathing got harder, his lips turning a dark blue. He needed foxglove tincture to make his heart stronger, cool cloths to ease his fever, and maybe bloodletting to lower the pressure in his chest. All stuff she could have helped with. All stuff she knew from watching Doc Lawrence and reading his medical books by candlelight when the clinic was empty. But the words stayed stuck inside her, held back by memories of another time she'd spoken up, another life she tried to save. By the time Doc Lawrence got back to town, Mr. Jameson had been dead for hours. The third patient this year that Abigail had quietly figured out, the third patient she'd watched die because she couldn't find the guts to speak. That night, after the clinic had been swept and the tools cleaned and put away, Abigail sat alone on the small cot in the back room that had been her home since coming to Copper Creek. She stared at the worn leather journal in her lap, her father's medical diary, one of the few things she'd saved after his death. The pages opened to a familiar part. The ink was faded, but the words were still clear in her father's neat handwriting. "A physician's first duty is to observe. The second is to interpret. The third, and maybe most important, is to speak the truth of what one has seen, no matter if others want to hear it." Dr. Thomas Winters had lived by those words even when they led to his ruin. Even when his diagnosis went against those of fancier doctors, even when speaking the truth had cost him everything. Abigail traced her finger over her father's signature. How different they were. He was so brave and outspoken. She was so timid and silent. What would he think of her now, of what she had become? A shadow, a ghost hanging around the edges of a job she'd been born to do but didn't have the guts to claim. She closed the journal and put out her lamp. But sleep didn't come, like it often didn't on nights when death had visited Copper Creek. In the dark, she could still see Mr. Jameson's face, still hear Mrs. Jameson's accusations. "She's just the girl who sweeps the clinic." The words hurt because they were true. That was all she was now, all she had let herself become. 2 weeks passed. The Arizona sun beat down on Copper Creek with no mercy. Abigail swept the clinic's front porch, stopping sometimes to wipe sweat from her forehead. Even this early in the morning, the heat pushed down like a real weight, making the easy job of sweeping feel like moving through thick syrup. The far-off sound of horses' hooves and creaking wagon wheels made her look up. A nice carriage was coming, pulled by 4 matching brown horses, their coats shining with health and good care. Such fancy rides were rare in Copper Creek, and Abigail shaded her eyes to see the newcomers better. The carriage stopped in front of the bank across the street. The driver, dressed in a sharp black uniform, jumped down to open the door. A tall man got out, his way of standing as bossy as his clothes were pricey. Dark hair showed under a black Stetson, and a silver watch chain sparkled across his fancy vest. Even from far away, Abigail could see he was handsome in a strict way. Strong jaw, straight nose, eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. There was something familiar about him, though she was sure they had never met. She would have remembered such a man. He spoke quick to the driver, then turned toward the bank. That's when Abigail noticed it. A slight shake in his left hand as he reached for his leather folder. Almost too small to see, but her trained eye caught it. Then came the subtle stop in his movement, the barely seen wince, the way his right hand moved a bit to his chest before he caught himself and straightened his shoulders. Abigail's breath caught. She knew those signs. They were the same ones Mr. Jameson had shown in the weeks before his death. "You've been staring at that gentleman for quite some time, Miss Winters." Abigail jumped, almost dropping her broom. Mrs. Chen, the seamstress, had come up without her noticing, a basket of fabric scraps balanced on one hip. I wasn't staring," Abigail stammered, her cheeks getting warm. "I was just wondering who he might be." Mrs. Chen smiled like she knew better. "That's Nathan Thornhill, owns the biggest cattle ranch in 3 territories. They say he's richer than the governor himself." She leaned closer, dropping her voice to a whisper like they were sharing secrets. "And a widower. Lost his wife in childbirth some years back. No children." Abigail barely heard the gossip. She was still watching Nathan Thornhill as he went into the bank. The shake in his hand, the shortness of breath, the quick chest pain, all classic signs of a heart problem, maybe the same one that had killed Mr. Jameson. And if it was getting worse the same way, "Miss Winters, are you feeling unwell?" Mrs. Chen's voice seemed to come from far away. "You've gone quite pale." "I'm fine," Abigail managed. "Just the heat." Mrs. Chen didn't look like she believed it, but she nodded and went on her way, leaving Abigail alone with her worried thoughts. If what she thought was true, Nathan Thornhill might be in real danger. But what could she do? She was just the clinic girl, the quiet one who swept floors and organized supplies. No one would listen to her medical opinions, especially not about a man like Thornhill. And yet if she said nothing and he fell down like Mr. Jameson had, the clinic door opened behind her. "Abigail, I need those splints ready for young Billy Turner." Broke his arm falling from the hayloft again. Doc Lawrence's voice was rough, but not mean. "Yes, doctor." Abigail hurried inside, glad for something to distract her. The clinic was a simple building, but Doc Lawrence kept it super clean and well organized. The main room had an exam table, a small desk, and shelves lined with bottles, bandages, and medical tools. A curtain door led to a second room where patients could rest if needed. And beyond that was the small room Abigail called home. As she got the splints ready, her mind kept going back to Nathan Thornhill and the signs she'd seen. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe it was just tiredness from a long trip. But she knew better. She had gotten her father's eye for spotting illness, his skill to see patterns and symptoms that others missed. It was both a gift and a curse to know what might be wrong, but to not have the power or guts to do something about it. By midday, the heat had become almost too much to bear. Abigail had just finished cleaning the tools from Billy Turner's arm setting when the clinic door opened, bringing a blast of hot air and the big figure of Nathan Thornhill. Up close, he was even more scary, tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that said he was used to giving orders, not taking them. But Abigail also noticed the thin sweat on his forehead that wasn't just from the heat, the slight paleness under his sun-darkened skin, the careful way he held himself like quick moves might hurt. "Good afternoon," he said, taking off his hat. "I'm looking for the doctor." Abigail looked down at the floor, her heartbeat speeding up. "Dr. Lawrence is out on a call at the Sullivan Ranch. Their youngest has the fever again." Her voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "I see." Thornhill frowned a little. "Any idea when he might return?" "Not until evening, sir." Is there something I might help you with?" The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise him. He looked at her for a moment, his dark eyes checking her out. "Unless you're hiding a medical degree under that apron, I doubt it." "Miss Winters. Abigail Winters. I'm Dr. Lawrence's assistant." His assistant? Thornhill's eyebrow went up like he didn't believe it as he looked at her plain dress and young face. "What does that mean exactly?" "I keep the clinic clean, organize supplies, prepare medicines according to Dr. Lawrence's instructions." She paused, then added, "And I observe. I've learned a great deal in 3 years." "I'm sure you have." His tone made it clear he thought otherwise. "Will Miss Winters please tell the doctor that Nathan Thornhill called and will return tomorrow?" He turned to leave, but as he did, Abigail saw him wince and press his hand quick to his chest, a move he tried fast to hide as fixing his vest. Before she could stop herself, the words fell out. "Mr. Thornhill, are you having chest pain?" He stopped sudden, turning back to face her with narrow eyes. "Excuse me." Abigail's guts almost failed her, but the memory of Mr. Jameson's blue lips and Mrs. Jameson's blaming eyes pushed her on. "Your left hand shook when you first got to town. You seem short of breath even though you're moving slow, and you've pressed your hand to your chest twice now in clear pain." She took a deep breath. "These are signs of a possible heart problem." For a long moment, Thornhill stared at her like she had started talking in a weird language. Then his face got hard. "You've been watching me pretty close, it seems." "I notice things," Abigail admitted, her voice dropping to its usual whisper, "especially things about illness." It's what I do, is it now?" He took a step closer, towering over her. "And what exactly makes you qualified to diagnose me, Miss Winters? What medical school gave you that power?" Abigail shrank back. "None, sir, but nothing." "You're going too far, young lady. I'm in perfect health." As if to prove him wrong, a flash of pain crossed his face, and he grabbed the edge of the nearby desk for support. His breathing got shallow and fast, his face getting paler. Without thinking, Abigail guided him to the exam chair. "Please sit down. The symptoms are worse when you're upset." To her surprise, he did it, sinking into the chair with less fight than she'd thought. She got Doc Lawrence's stethoscope from his desk, pausing only a bit before offering it to Thornhill. "I get if you don't want me to check you," she said quietly, "but maybe you could listen for yourself. Put the end here." She pointed to the left side of his chest. "A healthy heartbeat is steady and strong. If you hear skipping or fluttering, that's something to worry about." Thornhill looked at her like he didn't believe it, but took the stethoscope. After a moment of listening, a bit of doubt crossed his face. "What am I supposed to be hearing? May I?" Abigail asked, holding out her hand for the stethoscope. After a moment's pause, he gave it back to her. With careful moves, she put the chest piece over his heart, listening hard. What she heard proved her fears. Beats that weren't regular, skips sometimes, a rhythm that set a heart under stress. "Your heart is beating uneven, Mr. Thornhill. The pattern suggests heart weakness, maybe made worse by stress or hard work." She took off the stethoscope and stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they had been. It's very like what Mr. Jameson had before his heart failed all the way." "Jameson?" Thornhill's brow wrinkled. "A local rancher. He died 2 weeks ago from heart failure. He showed many of the same symptoms you're showing now." Thornhill's face got dark. "So you're telling me I'm dying?" "No, not necessarily. With proper rest, medicine, and staying away from stress, the condition can be handled." But if ignored, she let the meaning hang in the air between them. Thornhill studied her face for a long moment, like he was searching for something. You seem very sure of your diagnosis, Miss Winters, for someone with no real training. I've been watching and learning from Dr. Lawrence for 3 years, she replied, finding a strength in her voice that surprised her. And before that, I learned from my father, who was also a physician. Your father. Something changed in Thornhill's face. What was his name? Thomas Winters. The name still brought a mix of pride and pain. He practiced medicine in Santa Fe. Thornhill went very still, his gaze getting stronger. Thomas Winters, he repeated slowly. The same Dr. Winters who was accused of medical mistake in the death of Elizabeth Thornhill 6 years ago. The same Dr. Winters who took his own life rather than face the results of his actions. Abigail felt like the floor had dropped out under her feet. How did you? Elizabeth was my sister, Miss Winters. His voice was quiet, but had a current of feeling that made Abigail step back more. She died under your father's care. A death that could have been stopped according to the words of more qualified physicians. The blood left Abigail's face. That's not you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Thornhill stood, seeming to forget his earlier weakness in the face of this news. I find it quite interesting that the daughter of Thomas Winters is now trying to diagnose me with a deadly heart problem. One might almost call it funny in a weird way. Please, Mr. Thornhill, your heart is in real danger. He grabbed his hat from the desk. I'll be sure to talk with the real doctor. Good day, Miss Winters. He walked toward the door, but before he could reach it, another spasm of pain hit him. This one worse than before. With a choked gasp, he stumbled, one hand grabbing his chest while the other reached blindly for support. Abigail was at his side right away, helping him back to the chair. Please sit down before you fall. Whatever you think of me or my father, your heart is in trouble. That's a medical fact, not a personal view. Thornhill sank into the chair, his breathing hard. For several minutes, he focused on getting air into his lungs while Abigail checked his pulse. She wanted to make a tincture of foxglove, but didn't want to leave him even for a second. In my saddlebag, he managed finally, his voice strained. There's a small silver case. Bring it to me. Abigail hurried to do it, finding the fancy case tucked inside the leather saddlebag on Thornhill's horse. Inside were several small white pills. One under the tongue, he told her when she got back. She watched as he put the pill under his tongue, his eyes closing as he waited for it to work. Slowly, his breathing got easier and some color came back to his face. Nitroglycerin, Abigail murmured, knowing the medicine. You already knew about your heart condition. Thornhill opened his eyes, looking at her with a mix of tiredness and giving up. For 2 years now, a specialist in San Francisco found the early stages of heart disease. He gave me the tablets for times like this one. Then why did you deny it when I mentioned it? A bitter smile twisted his lips. Because showing weakness isn't something men in my spot can afford to do, Miss Winters. And because the last thing I expected was to have my condition spotted by the daughter of the man who caused my sister's death. My father wasn't to blame, Abigail said quietly, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. The accusation against him was false. He was made a scapegoat. That's not what the inquiry said. The inquiry was wrong. She met his gaze steady, drawing strength from defending her father's memory. He diagnosed your sister right. It was the consulting physician who overruled him and gave the treatment that killed her. Thornhill's face got hard. You expect me to believe that based on what? Based on the truth. Abigail paused, then went to the small room at the back of the clinic. She came back with her father's leather journal. My father kept detailed records of all his cases, including your sister's. She opened the journal to the right pages where Thomas Winters had written down Elizabeth Thornhill's symptoms, his diagnosis of typhoid fever, and his suggested treatment plan. The entry ended with a note that he had been overruled by Dr. Richard Clayton, who had diagnosed the illness as malaria and prescribed quinine in doses that Thomas thought were dangerous. Thornhill read the entry in silence, his face not showing anything. When he finally looked up, something had changed in his eyes. Not quite belief, but no longer full doubt either. This proves nothing. It's just your father's word against Clayton's. Maybe, Abigail agreed. But ask yourself this. If my father really believed he had made a deadly mistake, why would he write it down so carefully? And if he were guilty, why would I, his daughter, be working in a medical clinic, spending every day trying to stop the same kind of tragedy that supposedly drove him to suicide? She hadn't meant to say so much, and the effort left her out of breath and shaking. But for the first time in years, the words had come easy, coming from a place of strong belief rather than fear. Thornhill studied her for a long moment. "You're not what I expected, Abigail Winters. Nor are you, Mr. Thornhill," she gathered her guts. "Now, will you let me help you with your heart condition, or would you rather wait for Dr. Lawrence's return, knowing that the stress of your business stuff might start another maybe deadly episode before he gets here?" A reluctant smile pulled at the corner of his mouth. "You don't hold back words when you finally decide to say them, do you? I found that staying silent hardly ever fixes anything." She glanced down at her father's journal, though it took me way too long to learn that lesson. Thornhill seemed to think about her words, weighing them against his own ideas. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, Miss Winters. What do you suggest?" "Rest first and most important. Avoid all not-needed hard work or excitement. I can make a tincture of foxglove to make your heart stronger and willow bark tea to thin your blood a little." She paused, and I would strongly say to put off any business matters until your condition gets steady. "That's not possible. I have a meeting tomorrow with James Morrison about a land buy. It's taken months to set up, and the deal is worth $50,000. What good is $50,000 if you're dead, Mr. Thornhill?" The straightness of her question seemed to startle him. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, but then he laughed, a short, surprised sound. "You really are Thomas Winters' daughter, aren't you?" He shook his head like at some private joke. He said almost the exact same thing to me once, though under very different stuff. Abigail blinked in surprise. "You knew my father personally?" "Not well, but yes, I met him several times during Elizabeth's illness." His face softened a bit. He was not what I had been led to expect. "What do you mean?" Thornhill paused, like deciding how much to tell. "The truth, Miss Winters, is that I didn't come to Copper Creek just for the Morrison land deal. I came looking for you." Abigail took a step back without thinking. "For me? But why?" "Because I've spent the last 6 years looking into the stuff around my sister's death, and everything I've found suggests that your father may indeed have been blamed wrong." His gaze was strong, searching. "I've been trying to find you since I learned you existed 3 years ago, to hear your side of the story, to see if you had any evidence that might help set up the truth. But you acted like you still thought him guilty. I needed to see how you would react, if you would defend him and how." He pointed to the journal in her hands. "I didn't expect such solid evidence, though I thought something like it might exist. Your father seemed like a careful man." Abigail's mind spun with this new info. "If you thought my father was innocent, why didn't you speak up at the time? Your family's power could have stopped the scandal that ruined him." A shadow crossed Thornhill's face. "By the time I started to have doubts, your father was already dead and you had vanished. Finding you has not been easy, Miss Winters. You've hidden your trail well." "I wasn't trying to hide," she said softly. "I was trying to survive. After Father died, there was nothing left for me in Santa Fe. Too many people believed the accusations, and no good household would hire the daughter of a shamed doctor." She looked down at her hands. "Doc Lawrence was one of the few who would take me in, and only because he had once studied with my father and respected his work. And now you've found a way to keep doing that work even without formal training." There was something like admiration in Thornhill's voice. "You correctly figured out my condition despite my tries to hide it." "That's impressive." Abigail felt her cheeks get warm at the surprise praise. "Thank you, but it doesn't change the fact that you need to rest. Your heart won't wait for land deals or business meetings. Maybe not, but neither will James Morrison. He's leaving on the evening train tomorrow, and if I don't meet with him before then, another buyer will get the land." Thornhill sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "It's not just about the money, Miss Winters. That land has the water source for my whole ranch. Without it, I could lose everything I've built." Abigail understood the problem but stayed firm. "At least put it off until afternoon. Give yourself time to rest and let the medicine work. I'll make the tinctures now, and you should stay here until your heart rate gets steady." After a moment's thinking, Thornhill nodded. "A fair deal, though I should send word to my partners that I'll be late." "I can do that for you," Abigail offered. "Just tell me where to find them." "They're staying at the Silver Dollar Hotel. Richard Clayton and 2 others. He must have seen her sudden paleness because he frowned. "What is it? Do you know Clayton?" "Only by reputation." Abigail tried to keep her voice steady. "He's the doctor who overruled my father's diagnosis of your sister, the one whose words were most damaging at the inquiry." Thornhill's face got dark. "Yes. Well, after Elizabeth's death, Clayton mostly left medicine for business. He's been my partner for the past 5 years, though our tie has been tense sometimes." "And you never faced him about my father's case, even after you started to have doubts?" "Business and personal stuff are best kept separate, Miss Winters." His tone made it clear the topic was done. "Now about that message. Tell Clayton I've been held up by a small issue, but will meet him and the others at the bank tomorrow at noon." Abigail wanted to push more to get why Thornhill could keep working with the man who might have caused both his sister's death and her father's shame. But she saw the stubborn set of his jaw and knew the talk was over for now. "Very well, Mr. Thornhill. I'll deliver your message while you rest here. Please don't try to move around while I'm gone." As she got ready to leave, Thornhill called after her. "Miss Winters." She turned back, finding his face more open than before. "Thank you for your honesty and for your help with my condition. It seems I may have judged you wrong." "Maybe we've both been too quick to judge based on not full info," Abigail replied. "Rest now, I'll return soon." The midday sun beat down without mercy as Abigail made her way to the Silver Dollar Hotel. It was the best place in Copper Creek, which wasn't saying much. Just a 2-story wood building with ideas of being grand in the form of a carved front and real glass windows. Still, it stood out among the town's more basic buildings. As she climbed the steps to the hotel's entrance, Abigail felt her usual shyness coming back. The lobby had several well-dressed men talking, their voices dropping to curious whispers as she entered. It was rare for a young unmarried woman to come into the hotel alone, especially one dressed as plain as Abigail. She went to the front desk where a balding man with glasses looked at her with mild surprise. "Can I help you, miss?" "I'm looking for Dr. Richard Clayton," Abigail said, her voice barely heard. "I have a message from Mr. Thornhill. Dr. Clayton and his partners are eating in the restaurant." The clerk pointed toward a doorway at the far end of the lobby. "But maybe I could deliver the message for you. It's not quite right for a young lady to thank you, but Mr. Thornhill asked me to deliver it personally." Abigail gathered her leftover courage and headed toward the restaurant before the clerk could say more. The restaurant was small but trying for fancy with white tablecloths and silver forks. Only 3 tables had people, one by a family with 2 kids, another by an old couple, and the third by 3 men in pricey suits. Abigail knew Richard Clayton right away, though she had only seen him once years ago at her father's inquiry. He had aged since then, his hair now more gray than black, lines deep around his mouth and eyes. But he still held himself with the same air of being better and in charge that had stuck with her younger self. The other 2 men were new to her, one tall and thin with a nervous feel about him, the other shorter and rounder with small eyes that darted around the room like he didn't trust it. Abigail went to their table, her heart pounding in her chest. "Excuse me, Dr. Clayton." Clayton looked up, his face going from annoyed at the break to something more calculating as he took in how she looked. "Yes, what is it, girl?" "I have a message from Mr. Thornhill." She fought to keep her voice steady. "He asked me to tell you that he's been delayed by a minor matter, but will meet you and the others at the bank tomorrow at noon." "Delayed?" The thin man frowned. "The Morrison meeting is set for 10 barao. It's been changed to noon," Abigail replied, trying to show more confidence than she felt. Clayton looked at her more close. "You're from the doctor's office, aren't you? I've seen you sweeping the porch." His lips curved in a brush-off smile. "What exactly is the nature of this minor matter that's delayed, Thornhill?" "I'm not free to talk about Mr. Thornhill's private business, sir." "Is he sick?" The shorter man leaned forward, his small eyes getting narrower. He looked unwell when we got here yesterday. As I said, I cannot discuss. You can and you will, Clayton cut in, his tone getting hard. Thornhill and I have been partners for 5 years. If something is wrong with him, I have a right to know. Abigail paused, torn between her promise to Thornhill and her want to avoid a fight. Mr. Thornhill is resting at the clinic as a safety. Dr. Lawrence is checking him to make sure he's fit for tomorrow's meeting. Lawrence? Clayton snorted. That backwoods bone fixer barely got his medical license. If Thornhill needs a doctor, he should have come to me. You haven't done medicine in years, Abigail pointed out before she could stop herself. Clayton's eyebrows shot up. You seem really well informed for a cleaning girl, and really rude, too. I apologize if I've offended, sir. I should go back to the clinic now. She turned to leave, but Clayton's voice stopped her. Wait, what did you say your name was? I didn't, sir. Abigail kept her face carefully blank. Good day, gentlemen. She hurried from the restaurant, feeling Clayton's gaze drilling into her back. Had he known who she was? It seemed not likely she had been just a kid at the time of her father's shame, and she had changed a lot in the years since. Still, the meeting left her shaken. By the time she got back to the clinic, Abigail had calmed herself enough to focus on her patient. She found Thornhill still sitting in the exam chair, though he had taken off his vest and loosened his collar for comfort. Did you deliver the message? He asked as she came in. Yes, they seemed worried about your delay. I'm sure they were. Time is money, and Clayton loves both the same. Thornhill studied her face. You seem troubled. Did something happen at the hotel? Abigail busied herself with making the foxglove tincture, avoiding his sharp gaze. No, nothing important. Dr. Clayton was simply not as I remembered him. And how did you remember him? She measured the dried foxglove leaves, carefully dropping them into a small pot of boiling water. Taller, more scary. When I was a kid, he seemed like a giant, the man who could destroy my father with a few well-chosen words. Clayton has that effect on many people. Thornhill's voice had a note of bitterness. He does it on purpose. Yet you picked him as your business partner. As I said earlier, business and personal matters are separate concerns. He shifted uncomfortable in the chair. Though I'll admit, seeing his face when he finally learns the truth about your father's case will bring me a lot of satisfaction. Abigail looked up sharp. What do you mean? Thornhill sighed, seeming to debate with himself before answering. I've been gathering evidence, Miss Winters. Documents, words from people, medical records, anything that might help show what really happened to Elizabeth and clear your father's name. I'm close to having enough to face Clayton, but I need one more piece. His gaze fell meaningfully on the leather journal she had shown him earlier. You want my father's journal? I want the truth it has. The detailed record of Elizabeth's treatment in your father's own hand, combined with what I've already got, it could be enough to prove Clayton's mistake and make Dr. Winters right after his death. Abigail's mind raced. The journal was one of her most treasured things, her last real link to her father. But if it could help fix his reputation, why hesitate? She asked finally. Why does it matter to you now after all this time? Thornhill was quiet for a long moment. Because I made a promise to your father, he said eventually, his voice low. The last time I saw him before the inquiry gave its verdict, he told me that Clayton had deliberately misdiagnosed Elizabeth to push a new treatment way he was invested in. I didn't believe him then. Grief and anger clouded my thinking, but his last words to me were, "The truth matters even when no one wants to hear it." After he died, those words haunted me. I started looking into it, and the more I learned, the more I got convinced he was right. And yet you kept your partnership with Clayton. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, Miss Winters. A grim smile curved his lips. Clayton has no idea what I've been doing these past 3 years. He thinks I've forgiven him. Moved on. That makes it easier to gather evidence against him. The news stunned Abigail. All this time, Nathan Thornhill had been working to clear her father's name while she had been hiding in the shadows, afraid to even talk of the past. I'll need to think about this, she said, finally going back to the foxglove prep. The journal is all I have left of him. I understand, but consider this. Would your father want his journal hidden away, or used to show the truth he died trying to protect? The question hung in the air between them as Abigail strained the foxglove tincture into a small bottle. She added a few drops to a glass of water and handed it to Thornhill. Drink this slowly. It will help strengthen your heart, but too much can be dangerous. He did it, making a face at the bitter taste. Not the nicest medicine. Few good medicines are. Abigail started making the willow bark tea next. Mr. Thornhill about tomorrow's meeting. I still think you should cancel it totally. Your heart needs full rest. That's not possible, as I've explained. Then at least let me come with you. The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise him. To watch your condition and step in if needed. Thornhill's eyebrows rose. That would be very unusual, Miss Winters. Business meetings are not usually attended by medical helpers. Unusual, yes, but maybe life-saving. Abigail met his gaze direct. I've already watched one man die of heart failure this month, Mr. Thornhill. I'd prefer not to add you to that list. He studied her for a long moment, his face not showing anything. You're a most unexpected friend, Abigail Winters. A slight smile softened his features. Very well. You may come with me tomorrow, though I warn you, Clayton will not be happy with your presence. I'm not worried about Dr. Clayton's happiness. The firmness in her voice surprised her again. Only with your well-being. As she handed him the willow bark tea, their fingers brushed briefly. A small thing, but it sent an unexpected warmth through Abigail's chest. She stepped back quick, suddenly aware of how close they were and the wrongness of being alone with him in the clinic. You should rest here for at least another hour, she said, turning away to busy herself with cleaning up. After that, if your heart rate stays steady, you may go back to your hotel. But you must promise to avoid all excitement or hard work until tomorrow's meeting. You have my word. Thornhill sipped the tea, watching her over the rim of the cup. You know, for someone who barely speaks above a whisper, you can be really bossy when it comes to medical stuff. Abigail felt her cheeks warm. Only when needed. Maybe it should be needed more often. His voice was gentle. Your father would be proud of you, Miss Winters, of how you've carried on his work despite everything. The surprised kindness brought a lump to her throat. Thank you, she managed, not trusting herself to say more. They passed the next hour in surprisingly comfy talk. Thornhill told her about his ranch, the struggles and wins of building it from almost nothing after his father's death, the happiness of seeing his herds grow and do well under his care. In turn, Abigail shared stories of her father, his dedication to his patients, his new treatments, his strong belief in speaking the truth as he saw it, no matter the results. By the time Thornhill got ready to leave, his color had gotten much better, and the shake in his left hand had lessened. Abigail packed the medicine she had made into a small bag for him to take. The foxglove tincture twice daily, 5 drops in water, the willow bark tea morning and evening. And keep your nitroglycerin tablets with you at all times. She handed him the bag. I'll come to the hotel at 11 hour tomorrow to go with you to the meeting. I'll be ready. Thornhill paused at the door. Miss Winters, thank you not just for the medical care, but for sharing your father's journal with me, for being willing to speak the truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. I've stayed silent for too long, Abigail replied softly. Maybe it's time for both of us to speak the truths we've been keeping to ourselves. After Thornhill left, Abigail went about her usual jobs, cleaning tools, organizing supplies, getting ready for Doc Lawrence's return, but her mind kept going back to the day's wild events. In the span of a few hours, everything had changed. The past she had tried so hard to run from had found her, but not in the way she had feared. Instead of bringing shame and push away, it had brought an unexpected friend, a chance to clear her father's name, and maybe even a shot to reclaim the purpose she had lost when he died. As the afternoon light slanted through the clinic windows, Abigail found herself standing before the small mirror in the washroom. The face that looked back at her was one she barely knew, still plain, still young, but with a new set in her jaw, a new light in her green eyes. For the first time in years, she looked like Thomas Winter's daughter again. The clinic door opened with its familiar creak, and Doc Lawrence's rough voice called out, "Abigail, are you here, girl?" "Yes, doctor, in the washroom." She quickly smoothed her apron and hair before joining him in the main room. Lawrence was a tall, thin man in his 60s with a shock of white hair and hands that were starting to show shakes from age. He had been kind to Abigail in his own short way, taking her in when no one else would and teaching her what he could, though he had never pushed her to aim beyond being an assistant. "How was Billy Turner's arm?" she asked, taking his medical bag to unpack and clean the tools. "Healing okay, though that boy will never learn to stay off hay mows." Lawrence sank into his desk chair with a tired sigh. "And Mrs. Sullivan's baby still has the fever, but it's coming down. Should break fully by morning if she keeps up with the quinine." Abigail nodded, laying out the tools for cleaning. She paused, then said, "We had a visitor today, Mr. Nathan Thornhill." Lawrence looked up sharp. "The cattle baron. What did he want?" "He came looking for you, but I noticed signs of a heart condition." She swallowed hard, then kept going. "I checked him and confirmed the diagnosis. He's taking nitroglycerin for the symptoms given by a doctor in San Francisco, but he needed more treatment. I made foxglove tincture and willow bark tea for him." For a long moment, Lawrence stared at her like she had suddenly started speaking Chinese. "You did what?" "I diagnosed and treated him. His symptoms were the same as Mr. Jameson's before he died, and there was no time to wait for you to get back. Mr. Thornhill was having chest pain." "And stop!" Lawrence held up a hand, his face a mix of not believing and anger. "You checked a patient, gave treatment without my watch or okay?" "Yes." Abigail met his gaze steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. "I believed his condition was bad enough to need quick attention. That wasn't your call to make." Lawrence got up from his chair, his face getting red. "You're not a doctor, Abigail. You're an assistant. Your job is to clean and organize, not to diagnose patients, especially not patients like Thornhill." "I know I'm not a doctor," Abigail replied, her voice quiet but firm. "But I know what I saw, and I know what needed to be done. Mr. Thornhill confirmed my diagnosis himself. He's known about his heart condition for 2 years. That's not the point." Lawrence ran a hand through his white hair. "The point is that you went beyond your spot. What if you had been wrong? What if your treatment had made his condition worse? The blame would have been mine alone." Abigail finished for him. "I would have taken full responsibility." Lawrence stared at her, seeming surprised by her calm claim. "This isn't like you, Abigail." "You've always been so careful, so aware of your place. Maybe too aware." She thought of Mr. Jameson, of all the times she had seen but not spoken, known but not acted. "My father used to say that a physician's first duty is to observe, the second is to interpret, and the third is to speak the truth of what one has seen. I've been doing the first two for years, but skipping the third." At the mention of her father, Lawrence's face softened a bit. "Thomas was a fine doctor, one of the best I ever knew, but he was also a qualified physician with years of training and experience." "You are not." "No, I'm not," Abigail agreed. "But I'm his daughter, and I've gotten more than just his name. I've gotten his eye for diagnosis, his understanding of treatment. And today, that stuff may have saved a man's life." Lawrence sank back into his chair, looking at her with a mix of annoyance and reluctant respect. "You sound just like him now?" He had that same quiet sureness when he thought he was right. He sighed heavy. "What exactly did you tell Thornhill about his condition?" Abigail described her diagnosis and the treatment she had suggested, including her push that Thornhill rest and avoid stress. She also mentioned her deal to go with him to his business meeting the next day to watch his condition. "You what?" Lawrence looked shocked. "Abigail, that's totally wrong. A young unmarried woman going to a business meeting with men she's not related to. The scandal alone could what?" Abigail cut in, a note of challenge in her voice. "Ruin my reputation, destroy my chances. I think we both know those ships sailed long ago, Doctor. I'm already the daughter of a shamed physician who took his own life. What more could society possibly take from me?" The straightness of her words seemed to shock Lawrence into quiet. For a long moment, he just stared at her like seeing her clearly for the first time. "This matters to you," he said finally. "Helping Thornhill. Why?" Abigail paused, unsure how much to tell. Lawrence had never asked about her past, and she had never offered the info. But maybe it was time for that to change too. "Because Mr. Thornhill knew my father," she said carefully. "His sister was one of Father's patients, the one whose death led to the inquiry that ruined his reputation. Thornhill has reason to think that my father was blamed wrong, that another doctor was really to blame for his sister's death." "Clayton," Lawrence said right away, surprising her. "Richard Clayton was the one who spoke against your father, wasn't he? Said Thomas had misdiagnosed typhoid as malaria and gave the wrong treatment. You knew?" Abigail stared at him in shock. "Of course I knew." Lawrence's voice softened. "Why do you think I took you in?" "Thomas Winters was my friend and work buddy. I never believed the charges against him, but I lacked the guts to speak up at the time. Taking you in was the least I could do to make up for that fail." The news left Abigail without words. All this time, she had thought Lawrence had given her a job out of simple kindness, or maybe respect for her father's medical skills. She had never thought he might have known the truth about the inquiry, might have been carrying his own guilt about how it turned out. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked finally. "What good would it have done?" Lawrence spread his hands in a helpless move. "The verdict was already given. Your father already gone. I thought it kinder to let you build a new life, not dwell on past wrongs that couldn't be fixed. But they can be fixed, at least partly." Abigail's voice got stronger as she spoke. "Mr. Thornhill has been gathering evidence to clear my father's name. He thinks that with my help, with my father's journal, he can finally prove what really happened to his sister, and who was truly to blame for her death." Lawrence's eyebrows rose. After all this time, why would Thornhill care now? "Because the truth matters," Abigail said simply, echoing the words Thornhill had said were her father's, even when no one wants to hear it. For a long moment, Lawrence studied her, his weathered face thoughtful. Then, with a heavy sigh, he nodded. "Your father would be proud of you, Abigail, not just for your medical sense, but for your guts in standing up for what you think is right." He smiled a little, though I suspect he'd be horrified by the idea of you going to a business meeting without a chaperone. The surprise humor made a small laugh come from Abigail. "Maybe you could come with us, doctor, as my chaperone and to confirm my diagnosis of Mr. Thornhill's condition." Lawrence thought about this, then shook his head. "No, I think not. This is your path to walk, not mine. But be careful, Abigail. Richard Clayton is not a man to cross lightly. If Thornhill is right and Clayton deliberately misdiagnosed his sister to push his own treatment way, he won't hesitate to discredit or destroy anyone who threatens to expose that truth." "I know." Abigail thought of Clayton's calculating gaze at the hotel, the way he had brushed her off as just a cleaning girl. Maybe that underestimating would work for her tomorrow. "But I can't stay silent anymore, doctor. Not when speaking might help fix my father's good name." Lawrence nodded slow. "Then go with my blessing. But promise me you'll be careful. Your father's reputation isn't worth risking your safety." "I promise." Abigail smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since coming to Copper Creek, she felt like she and Lawrence truly got each other. "Thank you for believing in me, doctor, and for everything you've done for me these past 3 years. "I've done precious little," Lawrence grumbled, though his eyes were kind. "But maybe that's been for the best. You found your own way in your own time. Thomas would approve of that." As evening fell over Copper Creek, Abigail finished her duties at the clinic with a new sense of purpose. Tomorrow would bring challenges and face-offs she had spent years avoiding, but for the first time she felt ready to face them. Not because she had suddenly become brave, but because she had finally found something worth being brave for: the truth about her father, and maybe also the truth about herself. That night, she slept with her father's journal beside her pillow, his words in his memory giving her comfort as she got ready to step out of the shadows and into the light of her own making. The Arizona dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold as Abigail made her way to the Silver Dollar Hotel. She had slept little, her mind too busy with the day's coming face-offs. In her basket, carefully wrapped in clean linen, rested her father's journal, the real proof of his innocence and Clayton's guilt. She had made her choice during the night. Nathan Thornhill would have the journal, and together they would use it to clear her father's name. The time for hiding, for silence, for shrinking into the shadows was over. The streets of Copper Creek were quiet at this hour, with only a few early risers about their business. The baker firing up his ovens, a stable boy leading horses to water, a miner heading toward the saloon after a night shift. They nodded to Abigail as she passed, familiar with the doctor's helper who sometimes brought medicines at odd hours. The Silver Dollar Hotel stood at the far end of Main Street, its whitewashed front shining in the morning light. Abigail paused at the entrance, suddenly aware of how wrong it was for an unmarried woman to call on a man in his hotel. But being proper seemed a small worry compared to the matters at hand. The same clerk from yesterday was at the desk, his eyebrows going up at seeing her. "Miss Winters, isn't it rather early for social calls?" "I'm here on medical business," Abigail replied, her voice soft but steady. "Mr. Thornhill is expecting me." The clerk looked doubtful, but pointed her to room 203 on the second floor. "Though I must say it's highly unusual for a young lady to thank you." Abigail cut him off with unusual firmness and headed for the stairs. Room 203 was at the end of a carpeted hallway. Abigail stood before the door, gathering her courage before knocking softly. Nathan Thornhill opened the door almost right away, like he had been waiting. He was already dressed for the day in a crisp white shirt, dark vest, and tailored pants, though he had skipped his jacket in the morning heat. His face showed signs of a bad night, shadows under his eyes, a slight tight around his mouth, but his color was better than the day before. "Miss Winters?" He stepped back, letting her enter. "You're earlier than I expected. I thought we might talk about matters before your meeting." Abigail stepped into the room, keeping a proper space between them. "How are you feeling this morning?" "Better, thanks to your medicines." Thornhill closed the door, but left it a bit open, a nod to being proper that Abigail liked. "The foxglove seems to have steadied my heartbeat." "I'm glad to hear it." She put her basket on the small table by the window. "But you still need to be careful today. Any excitement or hard work could start another episode." "I understand." He pointed to a chair. "Please sit. You look like you have something on your mind beyond my health." Abigail sat, smoothing her plain blue skirt over her knees. "I've made a choice about my father's journal." She unwrapped the leather book from its linen cover. "I want you to have it not just to read, but to use as proof against Clayton. It's time the truth was known." Thornhill's face softened as he took the seat across from her. "Are you sure? Yesterday you seemed not wanting to let it go." "It's the only thing of value I have to give." Abigail ran her fingers over the worn cover. "My father died for the truth in these pages. It seems only right that they should finally serve the purpose he meant." Thornhill reached across the table, his large hand covering hers briefly. "Thank you, Abigail. I promise I'll make sure it's returned to you once justice has been done." The surprise touch and the use of her first name sent a small shock through Abigail's system. She pulled her hand back, her cheeks warming. "There's something else. Something I realized during the night." "What is it?" "The Morrison land deal. It's not just about the water rights for your ranch, is it? It's about bringing Clayton back to the place of his crime." A smile tugged at the corner of Thornhill's mouth. "You are really sharp, Miss Winters." "Yes. The Morrison property is next to what was once your father's land in this area, the land where Clayton did some of his more questionable medical tests on local ranch hands." "Tests?" Abigail's eyes widened. "What kind of tests?" "Testing new treatments without right oversight or okay. Your father found out what Clayton was doing and threatened to report him to the medical board." Thornhill's face darkened. "Soon after that, my sister got sick and Clayton saw a chance to shame your father before he could speak out. And you knew this when you started your business tie with him." "Not at first. I only started to piece it together 3 years ago, after finding some of Clayton's old letters in my sister's things." Thornhill's gaze was steady. Once I suspected the truth, I grew our partnership to get access to more proof and to set myself up to ruin him when the time was right. The planned patience of his revenge both impressed and worried Abigail. Today is that time, isn't it? With Morrison here and the land deal about to close, you plan to face Clayton with the proof. Yes. Thornhill leaned forward, his voice dropping. Morrison was one of the few who suspected Clayton's bad deeds years ago, but like many, he feared speaking out against such a big physician. He's agreed to back my claims if I can give solid proof. He nodded toward the journal, which your father's records now give us. Abigail took a deep breath, steadying herself. Then I'm doubly glad I decided to give it to you. But you must promise me one thing. If I can, don't let your want for revenge put your health in danger. My father wouldn't want another life lost in chase of his clearing. Thornhill studied her for a long moment, his face softening. You have my word. Justice, not vengeance, is my goal today. A knock at the door broke their talk. It opened before either could answer, showing Richard Clayton, dressed perfect in a charcoal suit, his silver hair styled careful. Thornhill, the carriage's Clayton stopped sudden, his gaze sharpening as he took in Abigail's presence. What is the meaning of this? Abigail rose quick, her heart hammering in her chest, but Thornhill stayed seated, his manner on purpose casual. Miss Winters has been kind enough to check on my health this morning, Clayton. As I mentioned yesterday, I had some discomfort. Clayton's eyes narrowed as they moved from Thornhill to Abigail, then to the journal on the table. A health check that needs reading stuff. How interesting. His tone made it clear he found it anything but. I wasn't aware that the doctor's cleaning girl made house calls. Miss Winters is more than a cleaning girl, Thornhill replied, a bit of steel in his voice. She's a skilled medical helper who correctly spotted a heart condition that could have been deadly if not treated. Did she now? Clayton's smile didn't reach his eyes. How convenient that she found this condition just before our most important business meeting in years. Are you saying I'm faking illness, Clayton? I'm saying that young women who are easy to impress sometimes see what they want to see. Clayton's gaze moved over Abigail like she wasn't worth it, especially when the patient is a man of your level and wealth. Abigail felt her cheeks burn with anger, but before she could answer, Thornhill rose to his feet. Miss Winters will be coming with us to the meeting today, he said firm, to watch my condition and make sure I don't overdo it. Clayton's eyebrows shot up. That's totally wrong. The Morrison deal is a private business matter, not a medical show. Still, she will attend. Thornhill's tone made it clear the matter wasn't up for talk. He turned to Abigail. If you'll wait for me downstairs, Miss Winters, I'll join you soon. I need a moment to talk another matter with Dr. Clayton. Abigail knew the send-off and gathered her basket, leaving her father's journal on the table. As she passed Clayton, he grabbed her arm, his fingers digging painful into her skin. I know who you are, he said quietly, his voice meant for her ears alone. Thomas Winter's daughter. I remember your face from the inquiry. You were such a scared little thing then, hiding behind your father's coat. His grip got tighter. Some things never change, do they? Abigail met his gaze direct, calling up courage she didn't know she had. Some things do change, Dr. Clayton. The truth has a way of coming out, no matter how deep it's buried. She pulled her arm free and walked out with her head high, though her heart raced with a mix of fear and thrill. Clayton had known who she was, as she had feared he might, but instead of cowering, she had stood her ground. The feeling was new but not bad. In the hotel lobby, Abigail took a seat near the window, watching the town wake up as the sun climbed higher. Her thoughts turned to Elena Mendez, who would be expecting her for a check on her pregnancy this morning. Abigail had asked Doc Lawrence to look in on Elena while she was gone, saying only that she had urgent business elsewhere. The doctor had agreed, not wanting to, still uncomfortable with her being in Thornhill's affairs, but not willing to leave a patient in need. Elena's friendship had been a surprise but precious during Abigail's time in Copper Creek. The young Mexican woman had come 2 years earlier with her husband Miguel, who had taken work in the copper mines. Pregnant now with their first child, Elena had a breathing problem that made her pregnancy extra delicate. When other town folks had shunned the Mendez for their background, Abigail had reached out, seeing in Elena a like spirit, another woman living on the edges of society, making the best of limited stuff. In return, Elena had shared her knowledge of old healing herbs passed down through generations of her family. Some of these fixes had worked really well, especially for heart problems. It was Elena who had suggested the willow bark tea for Thornhill, assuring Abigail it would help thin his blood and lower the risk of clots. "Miss Winters." Abigail looked up to find a young man in hotel clothes standing before her. "Yes, Mr. Thornhill asked me to tell you that he and Dr. Clayton have left for the bank to meet with Mr. Morrison. He asks that you join them there when you can." Abigail stood quick, alarm rising in her chest. "They left without me? Just a few minutes ago." Miss Dr. Clayton seemed in quite a hurry. Of course he did. Clayton had known who she was and the threat she posed. He had on purpose separated her from Thornhill, maybe hoping to finish the meeting before she could get there with her blame and proof. "Thank you," she told the young man, gathering her basket. "Please tell Mr. Thornhill I'm on my way." The bank stood at the center of Main Street, a solid brick building that spoke of lasting and wealth in a town mostly made of wood. As Abigail came near, she saw several pricey horses tied outside, including Thornhill's Special Bay stallion. A crowd had gathered nearby, town folks curious about the important visitors and the business that brought them to Copper Creek. Abigail paused at the bank's entrance. As a woman, and especially as an unmarried woman of no social spot, she had never had reason to go into the bank before. Would they even let her in? And if they did, how would she explain being at a private business meeting? Before she could decide on what to do, the bank's door opened and James Morrison himself came out. He was a big figure, tall and broad-shouldered despite his 60 years, with a shock of white hair and a neat trimmed beard. His pricey suit spoke of money, but his weathered face and rough hands showed his start as a working rancher. His eyes widened a bit at seeing Abigail. "Miss Winters, I presume?" "Yes, sir." She curtsied a little, surprised he knew her name. "I was supposed to join Mr. Thornhill's meeting, but it seems I've been delayed." "So I gathered." Morrison glanced over his shoulder at the bank's inside, then back to Abigail. "Mr. Thornhill mentioned you might be joining us, but Dr. Clayton was most pushy that we go on without you. Something about the wrongness of a young lady being at business talks. It's not the business that worries me, Mr. Morrison, but Mr. Thornhill's health. He has a serious heart condition that could be made worse by stress or excitement." Morrison studied her face, his blue eyes smart under bushy white brows. "Is that the only reason you want to attend, Miss Winters?" Abigail paused, then chose honesty. "No, sir. There are other matters, personal matters involving Dr. Clayton, that I think should be talked about before any deal is done." "I suspected as much." Morrison stroked his beard, thoughtful. Thornhill hinted at certain news about Clayton's past, especially his medical ways. He paused, studying her more close. "You're Thomas Winters' daughter, aren't you?" "I thought I knew the name." "You knew my father." Abigail couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "Not well, but our paths crossed several times. He treated some of my ranch hands years ago when an outbreak of typhoid swept through the area. Good man, thorough, didn't deserve what happened to him." Morrison's gaze sharpened. "I always wondered if there was more to that story than met the eye." "There was, sir, much more." Abigail took a deep breath. "And I think Mr. Thornhill plans to show it today with proof from my father's medical journal." "I see." Morrison glanced again toward the bank. "That explains Clayton's unusual upset. He's been pushing hard to close this deal fast, even offering to cut his commission." He turned back to Abigail. "Well, Miss Winters, I think you should join us after all. As a concerned medical person, of course." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison." He offered his arm with old-time politeness. "Shall we? I find I'm suddenly quite interested in hearing what Mr. Thornhill has to say about his business partner." Inside, the bank was cool and dim compared to the bright morning outside. Morrison led Abigail past the teller windows to a door marked private at the back of the building. He knocked once and opened it without waiting for an answer. The room beyond was clearly the bank manager's office, furnished with a large oak desk, leather chairs, and bookshelves filled with ledgers. Nathan Thornhill stood by the window while Richard Clayton and two other men, the same partners from the hotel restaurant, sat in chairs set before the desk. The bank manager himself, a chubby man with a nervous way, sat in the chair behind the desk. All talk stopped as Morrison and Abigail entered. "Ah, Miss Winters, you found us after all." Thornhill's voice was nice, but Abigail could see the tension in his stance, the careful way he controlled his breathing. The face-off with Clayton was taking its toll. Clayton rose from his chair, his face getting red with anger. "This is outrageous. The girl has no business here. This is a private talk between the girl. Morrison cut in is here at my invite. Clayton, as the seller in this deal, I think that's my right." He guided Abigail to a chair near Thornhill. "Besides, I understand she has medical skills that may be needed given Mr. Thornhill's condition." "Medical skills?" Clayton laughed like it was dumb. "She's a clinic maid, nothing more. That clinic maid correctly diagnosed a heart condition that could have killed me," Thornhill said quietly. "A condition, interestingly, that runs in my family. My father died of it, and if I'm not wrong, the early signs were there in my sister Elizabeth before her final illness." At the mention of Elizabeth, a subtle change came over Clayton's face, a tightening around the eyes, a slight paling under his weathered skin. "Your sister died of malaria, Thornhill, as was set for sure at the inquiry, did she?" Thornhill moved away from the window, picking up a leather book from the desk, Abigail's father's journal. "That's not what Dr. Winters wrote in his medical records. According to his notes, Elizabeth showed classic signs of typhoid fever, not malaria. He suggested a treatment plan that you overruled in favor of huge doses of quinine. Winters was a country doctor with limited training." Clayton brushed it off, though Abigail saw a faint sweat on his brow. "I was the expert consultant from San Francisco with lots of experience in tropical diseases." "Experience you got where exactly?" Thornhill opened the journal to a marked page. "According to Dr. Winters' notes, you claimed skill based on research done right here in Arizona territory, specifically on land owned by Thomas Winters himself, which now is part of the Morrison property we're here to talk about." Morrison's bushy eyebrows rose. "Is that so? I was never aware of any medical research being done on that land." Because it wasn't officially okayed, Thornhill kept going. Clayton was doing unauthorized tests on ranch hands and miners, trying new treatments for malaria, typhoid, and other diseases without proper watch or okay. Treatments that often did more harm than good. "That's crazy!" Clayton stood, his face red with rage. "These are baseless claims from a shamed physician's diary. Winters was a failure who took his own life rather than face the results of his mess-up. My father was not a mess-up." Abigail's voice was quiet but clear, pulling all eyes to her. "He was a skilled spotter of illness who saw your tests for what they were, dangerous and wrong. He threatened to report you to the medical board, and you shut him up by using his most famous patient, Elizabeth Thornhill, to ruin his reputation." Clayton turned on her, his calm breaking. "You know nothing about it, girl. You were a child." "I was 16, Abigail corrected, old enough to get what was happening, though too scared then to speak out. She looked around the room, meeting each man's gaze in turn. "My father diagnosed Elizabeth Thornhill with typhoid and suggested right treatment. Dr. Clayton overruled him, saying it was malaria and giving huge doses of quinine, a treatment he was testing as part of his unauthorized research." "The quinine killed her," Thornhill added quietly. "Not the disease itself, but Clayton's cure. And when she died, he made sure the blame fell on your father." Morrison stroked his beard, thoughtful. "Serious claims, Clayton. Do you deny them?" "Of course I deny them." Clayton looked around, wild like a trapped animal. "This is a plot to shame me, to cheat me out of my share of this deal? Thornhill has tricked this girl, filled her head with lies about her father's shame. I have proof beyond the journal," Thornhill said, calm, though Abigail could see the strain in his face, a slight shake in his left hand. Letters between Clayton and his research buddies, words from surviving test subjects, money records showing payments to local officials to look the other way. "You've been checking on me." Clayton's voice rose in not believing. "For how long?" 3 years. Ever since I found your letters in Elizabeth's personal stuff. Letters that made me question what really happened to her." Thornhill's gaze was steady. "You've been a useful business partner, Clayton, giving me access to documents and links I wouldn't have had otherwise. But our tie was always meant to be short, a way to an end." The color drained from Clayton's face as the full meaning of Thornhill's words sank in. "You son of a," he whispered. "You've been planning this all along. Justice, Clayton, not revenge. There's a difference." Thornhill turned to Morrison. "I think this changes the kind of our talk today. Dr. Clayton will no longer be taking part in the land buy." Morrison nodded slow. "I'm leaning to agree. These claims, if proven, would surely disqualify him from any business dealings with me." He fixed Clayton with a stern look. "I had my doubts about you years ago, Clayton, when ranch hands from that area started dying of unusual problems. But like many others, I kept my worries to myself. It seems that was a mistake." Clayton's gaze darted around the room, looking for some friend, finding none. The bank manager looked uncomfortable, the other business partners shocked and careful. Finally, his eyes settled on Abigail, filling with a hate so pure it made her breath catch. "You!" he snarled. "Like father, like daughter, meddling where you don't belong, making claims you can't back up." "I think we've backed them up pretty well," Thornhill began. But Clayton cut him off. "You've backed up nothing. A dead man's diary. Letters that could easily have been misunderstood or faked. The words of a clinic maid with dreams of medical knowledge." Clayton laughed bitter. "None of that would hold up in any court of law or medical inquiry." "Maybe not alone," Morrison cut in. "But combined with my own records and notes from that time, plus whatever proof Thornhill has gathered, I believe the territorial authorities would find it strong enough to need a formal look. A look that would end your medical career for good," Thornhill added. "What remains of it, at least." Clayton's face twisted with rage. "You think you've won, don't you, both of you?" His gaze shifted between Thornhill and Abigail. "Well, you haven't. This isn't over." He grabbed his hat from the desk. "I'll see myself out. Good day, gentlemen. Miss Winters." He said her name like a curse, his eyes promising payback. Then he was gone, the door slamming behind him with enough force to rattle the glass in the windows. A tense quiet fell over the room. The bank manager cleared his throat awkward. "Maybe we should reschedule this meeting for another time, given the stuff." "That won't be needed, Mr. Wilkins." Thornhill's voice sounded strained, and Abigail noticed with alarm that his skin had grown ashen. "I think Mr. Morrison and I can go on without—" He broke off sudden, making a face as he pressed a hand to his chest. His breathing got hard, and he reached blindly for support, finding the edge of the desk. Abigail was at his side instantly. "Mr. Thornhill, sit down, please." She guided him to the nearest chair, her medical training taking over. "Where are your nitroglycerin tablets?" "Coat pocket." He managed, his voice tight with pain. Abigail got the silver case from his pocket and pressed a tablet into his palm, under the tongue quick. As Thornhill did it, she took his wrist, checking his pulse. It was fast and uneven, worrying but not yet deadly. The room had gone totally quiet, the other men watching with faces from worry to weird interest. "Is there anything we can do to help?" Morrison asked, quiet. "Some water, please," Abigail replied, not taking her eyes from Thornhill's face. "And if someone could open a window, he needs fresh air." The bank manager hurried to do both. Thornhill's breathing slowly eased as the nitroglycerin worked, though his face stayed pale and drawn. "I'm fine," he murmured, clearly for the others. "Just a momentary thing." "You're not fine," Abigail cut in firm. "This meeting is over for today, Mr. Thornhill. You need rest and proper medicine." "The deal can wait," Morrison said, surprising them both. "Miss Winters is right. Your health must come first." He glanced at the leather journal still open on the desk. "Besides, I find I need time to think about all I've learned today. About Clayton, about your sister's death, about Dr. Winters' role in it all." Relief washed over Thornhill's features. Thank you for getting it, Morrison. I'm an old man, Thornhill. I've learned that few things in life are really urgent enough to risk one's health. Morrison picked up his hat. We'll meet again when you're well enough. Without Clayton's part, of course. As the room cleared, Abigail stayed at Thornhill's side, watching his condition. His color was getting better slowly, and his pulse had steadied, but the episode had clearly made him weak. Can you walk back to the hotel? She asked, quiet. Or should I get a wagon? I can walk, he insisted, though he made no quick move to stand. Just give me a moment. Of course, Abigail poured him another glass of water. Drink this slow. It will help. He did it, watching her over the rim of the glass. You were great, he said finally, standing up to Clayton, speaking the truth about your father. I wish you could have seen the look on his face when you called him out. Abigail smiled faint. I was scared. It didn't show. Thornhill set down the empty glass. What happens now? Do you think Clayton won't just accept losing and sneak away? No, he won't. Abigail's face got serious. Men like Clayton don't give up power or reputation easy. He'll fight back, try to shame us both. Let him try. Thornhill's voice got hard. I've spent 3 years building a case against him. One afternoon setback won't undo all that work. Even so, we should be careful. Abigail glanced toward the door. Clayton is a dangerous enemy to make. We're not alone in this fight. Thornhill reached for her hand, his grip warm and reassuring. Morrison believes us. That counts for something in this area. The surprise touch sent a small thrill through Abigail, one she tried to brush off as wrong for the spot. She gently pulled her hand back, busying herself with gathering her things. We should get you back to the hotel. You need to rest, and I need to check on a patient, Elena Mendez. She's expecting her first child, and her condition has been delicate. The Mexican woman who lives near the mines? Thornhill asked slowly, rising to his feet. I've heard she knows something about herbal fixes. She does. In fact, the willow bark tea I made for you was her idea. Abigail supported him as they moved toward the door. Elena learned traditional medicine from her grandmother in Sonora. Some of her fixes are really good, especially for heart and lung stuff. Thornhill leaned on her more heavily than she thought he would like to admit. Maybe I should talk with her directly then. My condition seems to be getting worse, despite normal treatments. I can set it up if you want. Abigail guided him through the bank's main room, aware of the curious looks from tellers and customers. Though some in town might think it odd for someone of your spot to seek treatment from a Mexican midwife. I've never been too worried about others' opinions, Miss Winters. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. A trait I think we share despite your quiet way. Outside, the morning had turned to another hot Arizona day. They paused in the shade of the bank's entrance, Thornhill gathering his strength for the walk back to the hotel. Mr. Thornhill, Miss Winters, a voice called from across the street. Doc Lawrence was hurrying toward them, his medical bag in hand, his face a mix of worry and annoyance. What in blazes is going on? I've just come from the Mendez cabin. Elena's condition has gotten worse a lot. Fever, hard breathing. She's asking for you, Abigail. Worry shot through Abigail like lightning. Is the baby? Not yet, but it could come early if her condition gets worse. Lawrence glanced at Thornhill, noting his paleness and hard breathing. And you, sir, look like you should be in bed, not walking the streets in this heat. I had business to do, Thornhill replied, stiff. Business that almost killed you by the looks of it. Lawrence turned back to Abigail. I've done what I can for Mrs. Mendez, but she trusts you more. Says you get her remedies better than I do. There was no bitterness in his tone, only work-like practical. Can you go to her now? Abigail paused, torn between her duty to Elena and her worry for Thornhill. Mr. Thornhill needs go. Thornhill cut in gently. Your friend needs you more than I do right now. I can make it back to the hotel on my own. You'll do no such thing, Lawrence said. I'll see you safely back myself after I've delivered Abigail to the Mendez cabin. He looked around the street. Where's my wagon? Ah, there. Come along, both of you. No arguments. The doctor's wagon was a simple thing, an open buckboard with a canvas cover to give shade. Lawrence helped Thornhill into the back where he could lie down if needed, while Abigail took the seat beside the doctor. As they drove through town toward the group of small cabins near the mine entrance where the Mendez family lived, Lawrence updated Abigail on Elena's condition. Fever started last night. According to her husband, breathing got hard early this morning. I think pneumonia may be made worse by the mine dust that settles everywhere in that area. He glanced sideways at Abigail. She was asking about some remedy, something with white willow bark and another herb I didn't know. Think you know what she means? Yes, I believe so. It's a tea her grandmother used to make for lung swelling. I'll need to stop at the clinic for supplies. Lawrence nodded, guiding the wagon toward the clinic. And what about our fancy passenger? What happened at the bank that left him in such a state? Abigail paused, unsure how much to tell. There was a face-off with Dr. Clayton. Clayton. Lawrence's eyebrows shot up. Richard Clayton is here in Copper Creek. He's been here since yesterday. He's Mr. Thornhill's business partner. Abigail watched Lawrence's reaction careful. You know him? Know him? I trained under him years ago in San Francisco. Lawrence's face darkened. Brilliant physician, but a man of questionable right and wrong. Always more interested in pushing his ideas than in his patient's good. He glanced back at Thornhill, who seemed to be resting with his eyes closed. What kind of face-off are we talking about? Mr. Thornhill blamed him for wrong in a past case, specifically the death of his sister, Elizabeth. Abigail lowered her voice. He thinks Clayton deliberately misdiagnosed Elizabeth to shame my father and stop him from exposing Clayton's wrong research ways. Lawrence was quiet for a long moment, taking in this info. And you believe this blame is true? I know it is. Abigail met his gaze steady. I was there, Doctor. I saw what happened. Clayton gave huge doses of quinine for typhoid fever, a treatment that killed Elizabeth Thornhill, just as sure as if he'd given her poison direct. I see. Lawrence pulled the wagon to a stop outside the clinic. Wait here, I'll get your supplies. While Lawrence was inside, Abigail moved to check on Thornhill. He opened his eyes as she came near, offering a weak smile. I heard what you told the doctor, he said quiet, about Clayton and Elizabeth. I hope you don't mind. Dr. Lawrence knew my father. He might be able to help us build our case against Clayton. I don't mind. Thornhill's face got serious, but we need to be careful about who else learns of our blames. Clayton has powerful friends in the area, people who got good from his research or who took bribes to look the other way. Do you think he might try to silence us for real? I mean, Thornhill thought about this. I don't think murder is Clayton's style. He likes ruining character more than real violence, but he's desperate now, and desperate men make dangerous choices. Lawrence came back before Abigail could answer, carrying a basket of herbs and medical supplies. Found everything you mentioned, plus a few extras that might help. He handed the basket to Abigail, then climbed back onto the wagon seat. Now let's get you to Elena and Mr. Thornhill to his hotel. No sense wasting daylight. The Mendez cabin stood apart from the other miners' homes, built on a small rise that gave some shield from the dust that always rose from the mine works. It was a simple place, one room with a lean-to add-on at the back, but kept perfect. Bright cloth hung at the windows, and clay pots of desert flowers lined the small porch proof of Elena's want to make beauty in harsh spots. Miguel Mendez was waiting outside, his face drawn with worry. He was a compact muscle man with smart eyes and a quiet dignity that had earned him respect among the other miners, despite the bad feelings that sometimes came against Mexicans in the area. Miss Winters, thank God you've come. He rushed to help her down from the wagon. Elena is asking for you. The doctor gave her medicine for the fever, but she says she needs your help with the special tea. I'll make it right away, Abigail assured him, picking up her basket. How is her breathing now? Still hard, and she has pain here. Miguel put a hand over his lower belly. I am worried for the baby. Let me check her. We'll do everything we can, Miguel. Abigail turned to Lawrence. Doctor, will you? I'll see Mr. Thornhill safely to his hotel and come back as quick as I can. Lawrence promised. You know what to do if labor starts before I get back. Abigail nodded, her face serious. A early birth, especially with Elena's bad breathing, could be dangerous for both mother and child. I'll send Miguel for you if anything changes. Inside the cabin, the air was warm, but not stuffy thanks to the cloth-covered windows that let air in while filtering out the worst of the dust. Elena lay on a narrow bed in the corner, her swollen belly standing out under a light blanket. Her normal copper skin had a grayish tone, and her breathing came in shallow, hard gasps. "Abigail," she whispered as her friend came near. "You came!" "Of course I came." Abigail sat down beside her and took Elena's hand. "Doc says you need the special tea." Elena nodded, weak. "My grandmother's remedy for the lungs." She took a painful breath. "The baby? I think it comes too soon. Let me check you first." Abigail gently put her hands on Elena's belly, feeling for the baby's spot and any signs of coming labor. The child moved under her touch, a good sign, but Elena's womb felt unusually tight. "How long have you had the pain?" Miguel mentioned. "Since dawn." "It comes and goes." Elena's dark eyes were bright with fever. "But it is different from the practice pains, sharper and lower." This wasn't good. At barely 7 months, Elena's baby would face big challenges if born now. Abigail needed to do everything to delay labor while treating the lung swelling. "I'm going to make 2 remedies," she told Elena. "The white willow tea for your lungs and a tincture of black haw to calm the womb and stop early labor. But first, let's make you more comfy." Abigail helped Elena into a half-sitting spot, propped up with pillows to ease her breathing. She wet a cloth with cool water and put it on Elena's forehead, then set about making the remedies. The small hearth in the corner of the cabin already had a kettle of water kept simmering by Miguel's careful watch. Abigail added the dried willow bark along with yarrow and a small amount of elderflower, Elena's adds to the old remedy, which helped lower fever and thin mucus in the lungs. While the tea steeped, she made the black haw tincture, mixing the herbal extract with water and a small amount of honey to make it taste better. "This first," she said, helping Elena drink the tincture. "It's bitter, but it will help keep the baby in place until it's stronger." Elena made a face at the taste, but drank it all. And now the tea in a few minutes when it's properly steeped. Abigail checked Elena's pulse, finding it fast, but not dangerously so. "Tell me more about the fever. When did it start exactly?" "Last night." After Miguel came back from the mine, Elena's voice weakened, and she closed her eyes briefly. He brought a package. Medicine from the company doctor for the miners. But it smelled strange, wrong. Abigail frowned. "What medicine?" "For what purpose?" "For protection, they said, against disease in the mines." Elena's eyes stayed closed. All the men were to take it. Miguel refused. He said it reminded him of stories his father told of miners being given medicine that made them work longer but caused their hearts to fail. A chill ran down Abigail's spine. "Did any of the other miners take it?" "Most did. The company doctor said any who refused would lose their jobs." Elena opened her eyes, fear clear in their depths. Miguel hid his portion instead of taking it. "He was going to show it to Doc Lawrence, but then I got sick and he forgot." "Where is it now?" "The medicine." Elena pointed weak toward a small wood box on the table. "There." He left it there. Abigail crossed to the table and opened the box. Inside was a paper packet with a coarse grayish powder. She dipped her finger in it careful, then lifted it to her nose. The sharp smell was special, a mix of quinine and something else. Something she couldn't right away know. "Elena, did you touch this powder or breathe it in when Miguel opened the packet?" "Yes, I helped him hide it." Elena's brow wrinkled. "Do you think could it have made me sick?" "It's possible." Abigail carefully wrapped the packet and put it in her basket. "I'll have Dr. Lawrence look at it when he gets back. For now, let's focus on making you better." The willow bark tea had finished steeping. Abigail strained it into a cup and helped Elena drink it slow, supporting her head. Outside, she could hear Miguel pacing on the small porch, his footsteps a steady beat to Elena's hard breathing. "You're worried." Elena saw, her dark eyes searching Abigail's face more than usual. Abigail managed a small smile. "I'm always worried about my patients." "This is different." Elena reached for Abigail's hand. "Tell me." Pausing only a bit, Abigail shared what had happened at the Bank Thornhill's face-off with Clayton. The blames about wrong medical tests, her own role in showing the truth about her father's shame. And now I wonder if there's a link, she ended, nodding toward the packet in her basket, between Clayton's past tests and this mystery medicine being given to the miners. Elena's eyes widened. You think this Dr. Clayton is still doing tests here in Copper Creek? I don't know. It seems not likely he has been focusing on business rather than medicine for years, according to Mr. Thornhill. Abigail frowned, trying to piece together the chances. But the timing is suspicious. Clayton comes to town and suddenly a strange medicine is being given to the miners. You must tell Doc Lawrence, Elena insisted. And you're Mr. Thornhill. He's not my Mr. Thornhill. Abigail corrected without thinking, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. A knowing smile touched Elena's lips despite her pain. The way you talk of him suggests otherwise. Before Abigail could make a response, Miguel showed up in the doorway. There's a carriage coming, a fine one with matched horses. His face was careful. The driver asked for you, Miss Winters. Says his boss wants to speak with you urgent. Abigail moved to the window, pushing aside the cloth to look out. A sleek black carriage had indeed stopped outside the cabin, way fancier than anything usually seen near the miners' spots. The driver, dressed in a dark uniform, stood by the horses, while a figure stayed inside the vehicle. Did the driver say his boss's name? She asked Miguel. Dr. Clayton. Miguel replied, his tone making it clear he had known the name from their earlier talk. He says it concerns your father's reputation. Abigail felt a flutter of worry in her chest. What could Clayton want with her now to threaten her, to try to buy her quiet? You should not go, Elena said firm from the bed. This man is dangerous. You said so yourself. If I don't speak with him, he might come here to the cabin. Abigail glanced meaningful at Elena's condition. I don't want to bring trouble to your door, especially now. Miguel straightened his shoulders. I will go with you for protection. No, Miguel. Elena needs you here. Abigail gathered her shawl from the back of a chair. Besides, we're in plain view of a dozen cabins. Clayton won't risk anything too crazy in such a public spot. At least stay where I can see you, Miguel insisted. Do not go into the carriage. I promise. Abigail checked Elena once more, finding her breathing a bit easier after the tea. I'll be right back. Keep with the remedies as we talked. Outside, the driver bowed a little as Abigail came near. Miss Winters, Dr. Clayton asks for a moment of your time. I'm rather busy with a patient, Abigail replied, keeping space from the carriage. Whatever Dr. Clayton wants to talk can be said here. The carriage door opened and Clayton himself came out. He looked calm, almost friendly, a big difference from the angry man who had stormed out of the bank earlier. This change was maybe more unsettling than his earlier anger. Miss Winters, thank you for agreeing to talk with me. Clayton came near, stopping a respectful distance away. I know our past meetings have been fighting. I hope we can put that aside for a moment. What do you want, Dr. Clayton? Abigail made no effort to hide her carefulness. To offer an olive branch of sorts. Clayton pointed toward the carriage. Maybe we could talk private. I assure you my plans are totally peaceful. I prefer to stay here in the open. Abigail glanced back at the cabin where Miguel stood watchful in the doorway. My patient needs frequent care. Very well. Clayton sighed like disappointed by her caution. I'll be straight then. The blames made by Thornhill this morning are possibly damaging to my reputation and business interests. No matter if they're true, a public showing of such claims would be bad for all involved. Including my father's memory, Abigail asked pointed. Especially for your father's memory, Clayton countered smooth. Think, Miss Winters, even if Thornhill's claims were backed up, a new inquiry would for sure bring up the painful details of your father's shame and suicide. The scandal would be looked at again in every newspaper in the area. Is that really what you want? The question made Abigail pause. She hadn't thought about that part, the public shame of having her father's tragedy checked all over again. The whispers and stares that would follow her, even if his name was finally cleared. Clayton, sensing her pause, pushed his edge. I'm ready to make a generous offer, Miss Winters. Enough money to secure your future, to let you go after proper medical training if you wish. All I ask in return is you're quiet about these old matters. You want to buy my silence? I prefer to think of it as pay for unneeded suffering. Clayton's smile didn't reach his eyes. Your father's death was a tragedy no matter the stuff. Nothing will bring him back. But this offers a chance for you to build the life he would have wanted for you. Abigail studied Clayton's face, searching for some sign of real sorry or understanding. She found none, only the calculated look of a man used to fixing problems with money and power. How much? She asked finally, her voice neutral. Clayton named a figure that took Abigail's breath for a moment, enough to pay for medical school, to set up a practice afterward, to live comfy for years, more money than she had ever dreamed of having. That's a big offer. I believe in being generous when situations call for it. Clayton's face stayed nice, but his eyes were cold. Do we have a deal? Abigail took a deep breath, thinking her options. The money would indeed secure her future, give her chances she had long stopped dreaming of. But at what cost? What about Mr. Thornhill? She asked. Does your offer go to him as well? Thornhill has his own reasons for chasing this matter beyond worry for your father's reputation. Clayton's tone hardened a bit. My offer is to you alone. He can make his own choices. And there it was, the try to separate her from her friend, to make her alone and easier to control. Clayton wasn't offering pay. He was offering a bribe depending on her betrayal of both her father's memory and Nathan Thornhill's trust. I'm afraid I must say no, Dr. Clayton. Abigail met his gaze steady. My father's reputation, the truth of what happened to him, isn't for sale. Clayton's nice face vanished. Don't be a fool, girl. This is your one chance to get good from a bad situation. Thornhill is using you just as he used me. Once he's got his revenge, he'll toss you aside without a second thought. Maybe. Abigail stayed unmoved. But I'll still have the truth in my integrity. Integrity won't feed you or clothe you or move your career. Clayton's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. Think hard about what you're refusing. The offer won't be repeated. I have thought hard, Dr. Clayton. My answer stays the same. Abigail turned to go, then paused. One question, if you don't mind. The medicine being given to the miners, the gray powder. Was that your idea or the mining company's? Something flickered in Clayton's eyes. Surprise quick masked. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Abigail watched his face careful. It has your special elements quinine mixed with something else. A keep going of your earlier tests, maybe. You're imagining things, Miss Winters. Clayton's calm had come back, but there was a new tiredness in his face. I have no tie to any medicine being given to miners. Then you won't mind if Doc Lawrence checks a sample for the protection of the miners and their families. Do what you want. It's no worry of mine. Clayton stepped back toward his carriage. But remember this talk, Miss Winters. When Thornhill's promises prove empty and you find yourself alone with nothing but your precious integrity, remember what you turned down today. He got into the carriage without another word, and the driver right away set the horses moving. Abigail watched until the vehicle vanished around a bend in the road, her heart pounding in her chest despite her outward calm. Miguel came near, careful. What did he want? To bribe me, Abigail replied, still staring after the gone carriage. He offered me enough money to go to medical school and set up a practice afterward. And you refused? Miguel sounded not believing. Such a chance would have come at too high a price. Abigail turned back toward the cabin. How is Elena? The tea has helped. Her breathing is easier. Miguel studied Abigail's face. You believe this Clayton is tied to the miner's medicine, don't you? I do. His reaction confirmed it. Abigail told the short exchange about the gray powder. I need to get a sample to Doc Lawrence as soon as possible. If Clayton is doing some kind of test on the miners without their no or okay, we need to stop it before anyone gets hurt. Many have already taken it, Miguel said grim, following the company doctor's orders. Then we need to find out exactly what it has and what effects it might have. Abigail's mind was already racing through chances. Can you gather the other miners who haven't taken it yet? Tell them to wait until Dr. Lawrence has checked the powder. I will try, but many fear losing their jobs if they disobey the company's orders. Better without work than dead, Abigail said blunt. If this powder is what I suspect a mix of quinine and some kind of boost, it could cause heart failure in men already weakened by hard work and dust breathing. Inside the cabin, Elena had fallen into a light sleep. Her breathing still hard, but less desperate than before. The fever seemed to have broken, her skin cooler to the touch when Abigail checked. The remedies were working, at least for now. Abigail settled into a chair by the bed, her mind churning with the day's events. Clayton's show at the miners' quarters couldn't be chance. Had he followed her here? Or had he come specifically to check on the giving out of the mystery powder? Either way, his offer of money for quiet took on an even more bad look in light of the possible tie to tests on the miners. And what of Thornhill? Was he safe at the hotel? Or had Clayton gone to him with a similar offer? Or maybe a threat? Abigail found herself worrying about him more than seemed right for a doctor worried about a patient. There was something about Nathan Thornhill that had touched her heart, despite their short no and complicated link. His dedication to uncovering the truth about her father, his willingness to risk his business tie to expose Clayton's bad deeds, his quiet strength even when his health was failing, all spoke of a man of rules and guts. Elena stirred, her eyes opening. "You're still here," she murmured. "Did not go with the doctor?" "Of course not." Abigail offered her a sip of water. "I would never leave a patient, especially not for someone like Clayton." "What did he want?" "To bribe me. To keep me from helping Mr. Thornhill expose the truth about my father's shame." Elena's dark eyes studied her face. "You refused?" "Yes, even though it meant giving up the chance to become a real doctor." Abigail smiled a bit. "I'd rather be a clinic helper with a clear mind than a doctor who built her career on lies and betrayal. You're already more of a doctor than many who claim the title." Elena's hand found Abigail's. "Your father would be proud." The simple words brought unexpected tears to Abigail's eyes. "I hope so, he would." Elena's gaze was steady. "And so is your Mr. Thornhill." "I think he's not." "Hush." Elena smiled, weak. "I see how you speak of him. And I suspect he feels the same. The way he looked to you at the bank, according to your story, the trust he put in you with his health, his family's tragedy." Abigail felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It's not like that. He needs my help with Clayton, nothing more." "If you say so." Elena's smile widened a bit. "But when this is over, when Clayton is exposed and your father's name is cleared, what then? Will you leave Copper Creek, chase your medical studies elsewhere?" The question caught Abigail off guard. She had been so focused on the right-now challenges, clearing her father's name, helping Thornhill, caring for Elena, that she hadn't thought about what might come after. "I don't know," she admitted. "For so long I've been hiding, trying not to draw notice to myself. The idea of actively picking a future, of chasing dreams I gave up years ago. It's weird to think about, but not unwelcome," Elena pushed. "No, not unwelcome, just unexpected." Abigail fixed the cool cloth on Elena's forehead. "Rest now. We can talk futures and dreams when you're well and your baby is safely born." As Elena drifted back to sleep, Abigail moved to the small window, looking out at the harsh land that had been her home for 3 years. Copper Creek had been a safe spot when she needed one, a place to hide, to heal, to find some measure of purpose again after her father's death. But maybe it had also become a cage, limiting her view of what might be possible. Clayton's offer, tricky though it was, had woken up possibilities she had long buried. Medical school, a practice of her own, the chance to fully honor her father's legacy by following in his footsteps. And Nathan Thornhill, what role might he play in whatever future waited for her? Was Elena right about his feelings? Or was Abigail just putting her own growing like onto a man who saw her only as a way to an end, a way to expose Clayton and avenge his sister's death? These questions would have to wait. For now, Elena needed her attention, and somewhere in town, Clayton was likely planning his next move. Whatever dreams might lie ahead, the present demanded her focus and her courage. A sudden noise broke out from inside the bank-raised voices, the sound of furniture being flipped. A woman's startled cry. Morrison spun toward the door. Abigail closed behind him. Inside, chaos ruled. Papers were scattered across the floor. A chair lay flipped and the bank manager cowered behind his desk. Clayton stood near the center of the room, his face a mask of rage. While Thornhill leaned heavy against the wall, one hand pressed to his chest, his breathing hard. "You planned this from the start," Clayton was saying, his voice thick with fury. 3 years of supposed partnership, all to set me up for this moment. "I plan to expose the truth," Thornhill replied, each word seeming an effort. "Nothing more, nothing less." "The truth," Clayton laughed bitter. "You wouldn't know the truth if it slapped you in the face. Your sister's death was a tragedy, yes, but medical science isn't perfect. Diagnoses are sometimes wrong. Treatments sometimes fail. This wasn't a fail of science," Thornhill countered. "It was a deliberate choice to use Elizabeth as a test subject for your test protocols, the same ones Winters had threatened to expose." Clayton's gaze darted to the doorway where Abigail and Morrison stood watching. His face darkened more. "So the gang's all here now? The vengeful brother, the daughter of the shamed doctor, and the land baron with his own grudge to settle." He shook his head. "What a perfect little plot you've put together, Thornhill." Abigail ignored Clayton, moving quick to Thornhill's side. His face was alarmingly pale, and the shake in his left hand had come back stronger. "You need to sit down," she said, quiet, guiding him to a nearby chair. "I'm fine," he insisted, though his voice showed otherwise. "You're not fine," Abigail countered, taking his pulse. It was fast and uneven, worrying but not yet deadly. "Where are your tablets?" "Coat pocket." She got the silver case, pressing a nitroglycerin tablet into his palm. As he put it under his tongue, she turned to face Clayton, who watched their talk with open hate. "Are you happy?" she asked, her voice steady despite the anger rising in her. "You've on purpose poked a man with a serious heart condition, knowing the possible results." "I didn't poke anything," Clayton shot back. "He's the one who ambushed me with wild claims and that journal of yours." He pointed toward the leather book on the desk, its pages open to her father's detailed notes on Elizabeth Thornhill's treatment. "My father's notes were careful and right," Abigail said. "His diagnosis of typhoid was correct, as was his worry about the dangers of high-dose quinine treatment." "You're hardly qualified to say that, Miss Winters." Clayton's tone was brush-off. "Playing nurse in a frontier clinic doesn't make you a medical boss." "Maybe not," Morrison cut in, stepping further into the room. "But I've read the journal entries myself now, and they match what I saw at the time. Dr. Winters told me his worries about Clayton's treatment ways directly just days before Elizabeth Thornhill died. This was clearly new to Thornhill, whose head snapped up despite his pain. "You never mentioned this before, Morrison." "I wasn't sure my memory was right until I saw the journal." Morrison's weathered face was serious. "Winters came to me because he knew I had power in the area, power he thought might help stop Clayton's tests on the local people." "What tests?" the bank manager asked, coming out careful from behind his desk. "What are you all talking about?" Clayton straightened his jacket, making a clear effort to get back his calm. "Old history, Mr. Wilkins. Unlucky medical outcomes that have been twisted into something bad by people with their own plans." He turned to Thornhill. "I get your grief over Elizabeth's death. I really do. But this hunt serves no purpose except to reopen old wounds." "It serves the purpose of justice," Thornhill replied, his color getting better a bit as the nitroglycerin worked. "For my sister, for Dr. Winters, and for all the others whose lives you've hurt with your reckless want." "Others?" The bank manager looked more alarmed. "What others?" "The miners," Abigail said sudden, remembering the gray powder in Elena's cabin. "The medicine being given to the copper miners. That's your work too, isn't it, Clayton?" A flicker of something surprise, maybe, or worry crossed Clayton's face before he hit it. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "I think you do." Abigail reached into her basket, pulling out the small paper packet Miguel had given her. "This powder is being given to miners as supposed shield against disease. My friend's husband brought it home yesterday, and soon after being near it, his pregnant wife got serious breathing trouble." Clayton's face stayed neutral, but Abigail noticed a slight tight around his eyes. "And you right away thought some link to me, rather bold, don't you think?" "Not when I knew the contents." Abigail carefully unfolded the packet showing the gray powder inside. Quinine combined with a boost, likely strychnine in small doses. The same mix you were testing 6 years ago, according to my father's notes. Morrison leaned forward, checking the powder with a frown. That's the medicine the mining company's been pushing on the workers. I've had reports of more work followed by tiredness and heart problems among miners through the area. Just the effects one would expect from this mix. Abigail confirmed the quinine hides the signs of illness while the strychnine gives a short boost in energy and strength. But the long-term effects can be bad, especially to the heart. All eyes turned to Clayton, whose calm front was starting to crack. "This is silly," he said, but his voice lacked sureness. "I have no tie to any mining operation or their medical ways." "Maybe not direct," Thornhill said, reaching into his inner pocket and pulling out a folded document. "But the Copper Creek Mining Company is owned by a holding group called Westward Enterprises, which lists among its major owners one Richard Clayton, M.D. The bank manager gasped. "Is this true, Dr. Clayton? You're part owner of the mine." "Business investments are hardly a crime," Clayton snapped. "And they sure don't prove any link to these wild claims about test medicines." "No, but this might—" Morrison pulled a letter from his own pocket. A note from the mining company's physician to his suppliers asking for specific amounts of quinine and strychnine for a special formula made by a consultant known only as RC. He fixed Clayton with a hard stare. "Care to guess who RC might be?" Clayton's calm finally broke. "You've been checking me too," he demanded. "For how long?" "Since the first reports of unusual sicknesses among miners on my lands," Morrison replied calm. "I may have been slow to speak out 6 years ago, but I've learned from that mistake. I won't stand by while men under my indirect hire are poisoned for profit." "Poisoned?" Clayton scoffed. "That's showy nonsense. The formula simply helps the men work better, hiding small discomforts that might otherwise slow production that would be from illness that explained would." "So you admit it is your formula?" Thornhill pushed. Clayton's face froze as he realized his slip. He glanced around the room, seeming to figure his options, then suddenly changed ways. "Very well," he said, his voice getting back some of its earlier smoothness. "I gave a formula to improve worker output. It's perfectly safe when used as told, a fact confirmed by company physicians across 3 areas. "Safe?" Abigail couldn't hold her anger. "Tell that to Elena Mendez, who may lose her baby because of being near your safe formula, or to the miners who've had heartbeats, tiredness, and chest pains after taking it. Isolated cases likely due to pre-existing problems." Clayton brushed off her worries with a wave of his hand. "Every medical step carries some risk. The goods to the mining operation and to the area economy far outweigh those small risks." "That's not your call to make," Thornhill said quiet. "Not without the informed okay of the men taking the powder." "Informed okay is a luxury, not a need," Clayton replied. "These are unlearned workers, many of them immigrants who barely speak English. They wouldn't get the medical rules involved even if explained." The casual big-headedness of the statement hit Abigail like a real blow. This was the true Richard Clayton, a man who saw certain lives as throwaway or certain people as less deserving of care and thought than others. The same attitude that had let him test on ranch hands years ago, to use Elizabeth Thornhill as an unwitting test subject, to shame her father when he threatened to expose the truth. "That's where you're wrong, Clayton," Morrison said, his voice hard. "Getting medical rules isn't needed for basic human dignity. Every man has the right to know what he's putting into his body and what risks he's taking." He turned to the bank manager. "Mr. Wilkins, I think we should end this meeting. The land deal with Mr. Thornhill will go on as planned without Dr. Clayton's part, or money good." Clayton's face flushed with anger. "You can't cut me out. I have a legally binding partnership deal with Thornhill. I'm entitled to my share of this transaction." "A partnership set up under false stuff," Thornhill countered, standing careful with Abigail's support. "I think an area judge might find that makes our deal invalid, especially in light of your other questionable stuff." "You're making a serious mistake," Clayton warned, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. All of you. I have friends in this area, influential friends who won't take kindly to these claims. So do I, Morrison replied, calm, including the area governor who will be most interested to hear about unauthorized medical tests on miners and ranch hands. He moved toward the door. I suggest you leave Copper Creek, Dr. Clayton. Your business here is done. For a moment, Clayton looked like he might physically attack Morrison. Then, with clear effort, he got control of himself. This isn't over, he said, his voice tight with held-back rage. Not by a long shot. He snatched his hat from the desk and strode toward the door, pausing only briefly beside Abigail. Like father, like daughter, he murmured too low for the others to hear. Remember how his story ended? The threat hung in the air as he left, leaving a tense quiet in his wake. Abigail felt a chill run through her, remembering her father's last days, the public shame, the whispers that followed him through town, the bad night when he had taken his own life, rather than live with the ruin of everything he had built. Are you all right, Miss Winters? Morrison's voice broke through her dark thoughts. Yes, thank you. She turned her attention back to Thornhill, who had sunk back into his chair, clearly worn out by the face-off. But Mr. Thornhill needs rest. The excitement has taxed his heart a lot. Of course, Morrison nodded. Mr. Wilkins, could you set up for a carriage to take Mr. Thornhill back to his hotel? Right away, sir. The bank manager hurried out, seeming relieved to have something real to do after the dramatic scene he had seen. Once they were alone, Morrison looked at Thornhill with worry. Clayton won't take this lying down, you know. He's not a man who takes defeat nicely. I'm counting on it, Thornhill replied, surprising both Morrison and Abigail. His reaction today, his admit about the mining formula, his threats, all of it makes our case against him stronger. Your case? Abigail asked. I've been building a legal complaint against Clayton for 3 years, Thornhill explained. Gathering proof, collecting words, setting up the pattern of his bad doings. Today was the final piece, getting him to blame himself in front of witnesses. A risky plan, Morrison noted. One that almost cost you your life from the looks of it. Thornhill glanced at Abigail, his face softening. I had great medical care close at hand. The warmth in his voice sent an unexpected flutter through Abigail's chest, one she quickly pushed down. Speaking of medical care, I should go back to Elena Mendez. Her condition was serious when I left her, and I'm worried about the effects of Clayton's powder on her pregnancy. Go to her, Thornhill said right away. I'll be fine at the hotel. We can talk later about next steps on Clayton. I'll go with you to the Mendez cabin, Miss Winters, Morrison offered. I'd like to see firsthand what Clayton's formula has done to one of my renters. Abigail paused, torn between her duty to Elena and her worry for Thornhill. The choice was made for her when Doc Lawrence himself showed up at the bank, looking rushed and out of breath. There you are, he exclaimed upon seeing Abigail. I've been searching all over town for you. It's Mrs. Mendez. Her condition has worsened and she's showing signs of early labor. Her husband sent me to find you. Says you get her remedies better than I do. Abigail's heart sank. Early labor, but she's barely 7 months along. I know, Lawrence's face was grave. That's why I need your help. The traditional ways aren't working, and I'm slow to use stronger stuff given her breathing troubles. I'll come right away. Abigail turned to Thornhill, apology in her eyes. Mr. Thornhill, I go, he cut in gentle. Your patient needs you more than I do right now. He reached for her hand, giving it a brief, reassuring squeeze. I'll be at the hotel when you're free. The simple touch sent warmth spreading through her, and Abigail found herself momentarily without words. She nodded, gathering her basket, and followed Doc Lawrence out of the bank, Morrison close behind them. Outside, the Arizona sun beat down without mercy, the heat shimmering off the dusty street. Lawrence's wagon waited nearby, the horses stamping impatient in the heat. As they climbed aboard, Abigail explained the situation to the Dr. Clayton's link to the mystery powder, its likely makeup, and the possible effects on Elena's already bad lungs. Quinine and strychnine. Lawrence shook his head in disgust. A dangerous mix in the best of spots, deadly in the worst, and to give it to miners already suffering from dust-breathing unconscionable. Do you think it could have started Elena's early labor? Abigail asked, dreading the answer. Totally possible. Strychnine causes muscle tightens, including womb tightens. Lawrence flicked the reins, urging the horses to a faster pace. We need to fight its effects quick if we're to stop a premature birth. Morrison, seated behind them, leaned forward. What can be done for the other miners who've taken this powder? There must be dozens affected through the camp. First, we need to find all who've got it and stop more giving out, Lawrence replied. Then, depending on signs, various treatments might be needed. Heart boosters like foxglove for those with beats, calmers for those having shakes or no sleep from the strychnine. I'll see to it that the company doctor is replaced right away, Morrison promised, and that all left doses of the powder are taken and destroyed. That won't stop Clayton, Abigail said quiet. He'll simply move his operation elsewhere, find another weak group to test on. Not if the area authorities are told, Morrison countered. With the proof we now have, including his own admit, Clayton could face serious legal results, possibly even criminal charges. Assuming he stays to face them, Lawrence said grim. Men like Clayton usually have an escape plan ready. I wouldn't be surprised if he's already packing his bags, getting ready to vanish before any official look can start. The thought troubled Abigail deeply. After all these years, after all her father had suffered, would Clayton simply walk away again, avoiding justice as he had before? The chance seemed unbearable. They reached the group of miners' cabins, the wagon raising a cloud of dust as it rolled to a stop outside the Mendez home. Miguel burst through the door before they could even get down, his face drawn with fear. Quickly, he urged, helping Abigail down from the wagon. The pains have started coming regular. She says the baby is trying to come too soon. Inside, Elena lay on the narrow bed, her face twisted with pain as another contraction grabbed her. Her breathing was shallow and fast, her skin slick with sweat from the mixed effects of fever and labor pains. Abigail, she gasped as her friend came near. The baby, it's too early, I know. Abigail took her hand, projecting calm she didn't fully feel. We're going to try to stop the contractions, give the little one more time to grow strong. She turned to Doc Lawrence. We need Black Haw tincture. It's the strongest womb relaxer I know, and something to fight the strychnine. I have valerian root in my bag, Lawrence replied, already unpacking his medical supplies. It should help cancel the boost effects. Working together, they made the remedies, the Black Haw to calm Elena's womb, valerian to fight the strychnine, and a cooling tea of yarrow and elderflower to ease her breathing and lower the fever. Morrison and Miguel were sent to spread word among the miners about the dangerous powder and to collect any left packets for safe throwaway. As Lawrence gave the medicines, Abigail sat beside Elena, holding her hand through each contraction, murmuring words of cheer and support. The times between pains slowly got longer as the Black Haw worked, and Elena's breathing became less hard as the fever-lowering tea did its job. The contractions are weakening, Lawrence noted after an hour of worried watching. I believe we're managing to slow the labor. Thank God, Miguel murmured from his spot at the foot of the bed, where he had been putting cool compresses to his wife's feverish skin. We're not out of danger yet, Abigail warned. She'll need to stay in bed totally at rest for at least a week, and we'll need to keep the remedies to keep the contractions away until the baby is closer to full time. Elena, worn out but more comfy now, managed a weak smile. At least the little one is stubborn like its father, not ready to come out just yet. Miguel laughed soft, the sound mixed with relief. Like its mother, you mean? The most stubborn woman in all of Sonora. The tender talk brought a lump to Abigail's throat. Despite their troubles, the hard work, the bad feelings they faced, the health challenges, the Mendez had built a life of love and mutual respect. It was a reminder of what was possible even in the harshest spots. Morrison, who had come back from his mission among the miners, stood quiet in the doorway. Most of the men have turned in their packets, he reported. Some had already taken the powder, but now that they know what's in it, they've agreed to stop. I've set for Dr. Lawrence to check anyone showing bad effects. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Abigail rose from Elena's bedside, leaving Lawrence to keep watching her condition. She joined Morrison outside the cabin, thankful for the relative cool of the evening air. The sun was setting, painting the western sky in bright oranges and pinks. "You've handled yourself really well today, Miss Winters," Morrison said after a moment. "Your father would be proud of your guts and your medical smart." "Thank you." The simple praise brought unexpected tears to Abigail's eyes, which she quickly blinked away. "That means a great deal to me. I mean it sincerely." Morrison's weathered face was thoughtful. "Thomas Winters was a fine physician committed to the truth no matter the results. You've clearly gotten that quality from him." Along with his stubborn streak, according to those who knew him well, Abigail added with a small smile, "A needed trait in this area." Morrison glanced back toward the cabin. "Your friend is lucky to have you. Without your step-in, I think the outcome might have been quite different today." "Elena has been a good friend to me as well," Abigail replied. "When few others in town would notice my existence, she welcomed me into her home, shared her knowledge of traditional remedies." She paused, then added, "She's taught me that there are many paths to healing, not just those known by formal medical training." A valuable lesson. Morrison looked at her thoughtful. "Have you thought about chasing formal training yourself? With your natural skills and real experience, you could become an exceptional physician." The question caught Abigail off guard. I haven't thought about it seriously in years. After my father's shame and death, it seemed an impossible dream." "Dreams have a way of coming back when the time is right," Morrison noted. "And stuff changes. With your father's name cleared, as I think it will be once all the proof against Clayton is shown, there would be no block to your chasing a medical education, except the real matters of acceptance and money," Abigail pointed out. "Medical schools are not generally welcoming to women and those that need big tuition." "True enough," Morrison stroked his beard thoughtful. "But answers can be found for real problems when there's enough will behind them." He smiled a bit. "Think on it, Miss Winters. The area needs good doctors, especially those who get its people and conditions as you do." Before Abigail could answer, Doc Lawrence came out from the cabin, wiping his hands on a clean cloth. "She's resting comfy now," he reported. "The contractions have stopped totally, and her breathing is much better. I think the immediate danger has passed." "Thank heaven," Abigail sighed with relief. "Indeed," Lawrence fixed her with an appraising look. "Your quick thinking with the Black Haw tincture likely saved both mother and child. Not many physicians would have known to use it in this spot." "I can't take credit." Abigail said no. "Elena taught me about its properties. It's a traditional fix her grandmother used for threatened miscarriages. Still, you knew its use in this case and gave it right." Lawrence's tone was approving, almost proud. "That's the mark of a true healer. Abigail not just knowing fixes, but getting when and how to use them." The surprise praise from her usually held-back boss left Abigail momentarily without words. For 3 years, Lawrence had treated her as an able helper, but never as a possible equal in medical matters. This say of her skills showed a big shift in their tie. "Thank you, doctor," she managed finally. "That means a great deal coming from you." Lawrence nodded, a hint of regret crossing his features. "Maybe I should have said something sooner. Your father saw your potential years ago. He mentioned it in his letters to me. I've done you a bad by not growing that potential more active." "You gave me a spot when no one else would," Abigail reminded him. "You've taught me more than you realize simply by letting me watch your practice. A poor sub for proper training." Lawrence glanced at Morrison. "Which brings me to a matter I've been thinking since this morning's events. Abigail, I think you should apply to medical school, specifically to the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania. I trained with one of their teachers many years ago and could give a letter of recommendation." Abigail stared at him in shock. "Medical school. But the cost need not worry you." Morrison cut in smooth. "In light of today's news about Clayton and the mining company's ways, I think a big settlement will be coming to affected parties. As the daughter of the physician whose reputation was unjustly ruined by Clayton's actions, you would surely qualify for pay. And until such a settlement is done, Lawrence added. I'm ready to advance the needed funds for your first year's tuition and costs. Think it partial payback for undervaluing your help to my practice all these years. Abigail felt as though the ground had shifted under her feet. In the space of a day, her life had changed from one of quiet no-notice to one filled with possibility and purpose. The dream she had given up years ago, following in her father's footsteps as a physician, suddenly seemed within reach. I don't know what to say, she stammered. Say you'll think about it, Lawrence replied. That's all I ask for now. The fall term doesn't start for several months, giving you time to make your choice. The doctor glanced toward the cabin, and to make sure Mrs. Mendez delivers a healthy baby before you leave. I will think about it. Abigail promised, her mind already racing with the meanings of such a big change in her stuff. Thank you both for your faith in me. As twilight deepened into night, Lawrence offered to stay with Elena while Abigail went back to town to check on Thornhill and get fresh supplies from the clinic. Morrison gave his carriage for the trip, insisting that Abigail had walked quite enough for one day. The ride back to Copper Creek gave Abigail time to think on the day's wild events. Clayton exposed, her father's name on the path to being cleared, a medical education suddenly within her grasp. It was almost too much to take in at once. And then there was Nathan Thornhill, with his quiet strength and surprise alliance, his hand briefly holding hers in the bank, his voice warming when he spoke her name. She pushed that particular thought aside. Whatever pull might exist between them was complicated by stuff and unlikely to lead anywhere. Thornhill would go back to his ranch once the land deal was done, and she, well, maybe she would be heading east to medical school, doing the dream her father had held for her. The Silver Dollar Hotel was lit up bright as the carriage came near, unusual for this hour in Copper Creek. A crowd had gathered outside, their faces lit by lanterns, their voices raised in as she came near, collapsed right in the lobby, holding his chest like he couldn't breathe. Sent for the doctor, but he's out at the mines. Thornhill. It had to be. His heart condition, made worse by the day's stress, had finally overwhelmed him. Abigail pushed through the crowd, her medical training taking first over social nice. Let me through, she called with more boss than she had ever used before. I'm Dr. Lawrence's helper. The crowd parted slow, showing a scene of mess in the hotel lobby. Thornhill lay on the floor, his face ashen, surrounded by worried watchers offering mixed advice. A young clerk knelt beside him, trying to loosen his collar, while the hotel manager fluttered nearby, clearly upset by the mess to his place. Mr. Thornhill. Abigail rushed to his side, right away checking his pulse. It was weak and jumpy, his skin cool and sticky to the touch. A heart attack, not just an episode of angina like before. How long has he been like this? About 15 minutes, miss, the clerk replied. He came down from his room complaining of chest pain, then just fell. We've sent for Dr. Lawrence, but Dr. Lawrence is with another patient. Abigail made a fast check of Thornhill's condition. His breathing was shallow, his lips tinged with blue. Without quick stepping, he could die. I need foxglove tincture from the clinic and his nitroglycerin tablets from his room. Quick. The clerk paused, looking to the hotel manager for okay. Now Abigail's voice cracked like a whip, startling everyone there. Unless you want him to die right here on your floor. Go Jenkins, the manager ordered, pushed into action. Room 203 for the tablets and someone run to the clinic for the foxglove. As the men hurried to do it, Abigail turned her full attention to Thornhill. His eyes were closed, but he was awake, answering with a slight nod when she said his name. Mr. Thornhill, I need you to stay with me, she said firm, taking his hand. Help is coming. Just focus on breathing slow and deep. His fingers tightened around hers, knowing her words, though he couldn't speak. Abigail kept the contact, drawing on everything she had learned from Doc Lawrence and her father about heart conditions. Keep the patient calm. Make sure airways are clear. Watch pulse and breathing. Get ready for the worst while working for the best outcome. The clerk came back first with the silver case of nitroglycerin tablets. Abigail right away put one under Thornhill's tongue, watching anxious for any better. His grip on her hand stayed weak but steady, a reassuring sign that he was fighting to stay awake. "What happened?" she asked the clerk. "Was he upset before he fell? Did something bother him?" "He got a message," the young man replied. Just before he came downstairs, a boy delivered it to his room. He paused, then added, "And Dr. Clayton was here earlier asking questions about Mr. Thornhill's condition and visitors." Clayton, of course. After being shown at the bank, he must have decided to hit back at Thornhill direct. But how? What could have been in that message to cause such a bad reaction? The runner from the clinic arrived out of breath, carrying the bottle of foxglove tincture. Abigail quick made a dose, supporting Thornhill's head as she helped him drink it. The mixed effects of the nitroglycerin and foxglove should help steady his heart rhythm, but a full get-better would need rest and careful watching. "We need to move him to a bed," she told the hotel manager. "Best on this floor. Climbing stairs would put too much strain on his heart." "The hotel is full," the manager replied, twisting his hands. "Every room is taken for the mining company's quarterly meeting." "Then make room," Abigail insisted. "Surely someone can be moved short in an emergency." "I'll give up my room," offered a voice from the crowd. Abigail looked up to see James Morrison pushing his way forward. "Ground floor just down the hall. Plenty of space and privacy." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison." Abigail turned back to Thornhill, whose color was getting better a bit, though he stayed alarmingly weak. "Mr. Thornhill, we're going to move you to a bed now. Try to stay as still as possible." With Morrison's help and that of several watchers, they carefully lifted Thornhill and carried him to Morrison's room. The big chamber was simple but comfy, furnished with a large bed that would let for easier check and treatment than Thornhill's upstairs spot. Once he was settled, Abigail shooed everyone out except Morrison, who stood by the door like a guard. Alone with her patient, Abigail did a more full check, her worry growing as she noted the lasting uneven of his heartbeat despite the medicines. "Nathan," she said soft, using his given name for the first time. "Can you hear me?" His eyes opened slow, focusing on her face with effort. "Abigail," he whispered, his voice barely heard. "The message from Clayton." "Don't try to talk now," she urged, putting a cool cloth on his forehead. "Just rest. The medicines need time to work." But Thornhill kept going, his fingers tightening around hers. "Important. Check my coat pocket." Abigail got his coat from where it had been draped over a chair. In the inner pocket, she found a folded piece of paper, the message that had come before his fall. Opening it, she read, "Your win will be short. By the time you read this, I will be out of your reach, and proof of your sister's true condition will be destroyed forever. Remember this feeling, Thornhill. The helplessness of watching someone you care for slip away while you can do nothing to save them. That's what Winters felt in his final moments and what his daughter will soon get as well." The thinly hidden threat sent a chill through Abigail's body. Clayton was planning to run as Lawrence had guessed, but not before doing some final revenge, not just against Thornhill, but against her too. "When did this arrive?" she asked, showing the note to Morrison, who had moved closer in answer to her distress. "About an hour ago, according to the clerk," Morrison replied, his face darkening as he read the message. Clayton must have sent it just before leaving town. Leaving town, Abigail's alarm grew. "Are you sure he's gone?" "The station master mentioned a private coach hired for the evening train east," Morrison confirmed. "Paid triple the usual rate for special spot, according to talk at the saloon." Thornhill stirred on the bed, his eyes opening with more clear than before. "He can't be let to escape," he said, his voice weak. "Not again. Not after everything we've learned." "Your health is the first thing right now," Abigail insisted, going back to his side. "Clayton will face justice eventually, even if he runs short." "You don't get it." Thornhill struggled to sit up, making a face with the effort. "The proof, all of it, is in my hotel room. If Clayton meant what he said in that note, he may have already taken steps to destroy it." Morrison was already moving toward the door. "I'll check your room right away, Thornhill. Where exactly are the documents kept?" "Locked case under the bed. The key is in my vest pocket." Thornhill fumbled weak with his clothes, but Abigail gently moved his hands aside and found the small key herself, passing it to Morrison. "Be careful," she warned. "If Clayton is still in town and desperate enough to threaten us direct, there's no telling what he might do." Morrison nodded grim. "I'll take the hotel staff with me as witnesses. If the proof is still there, we'll secure it. If not," he left the meaning hanging as he left. Alone with Thornhill again, Abigail focused on keeping his treatment. The foxglove tincture needed to be given in carefully timed doses, neither too much nor too little. Between treatments, she watched his pulse and breathing, encouraged him to rest, and bathed his face with cool water to ease his pain. "You should be at the clinic," Thornhill murmured during one such moment of care. "Not playing nurse to a stubborn old rancher." "You're hardly old," Abigail replied with a small smile. "And I'm exactly where I need to be. Doc Lawrence is with Elena, and her condition has steadied. Yours, on the other hand, remains tricky." "Tricky?" Thornhill managed a weak chuckle. "A nice way of saying I almost died in that hotel lobby." "But you didn't," Abigail countered firm. "And you won't, so long as you follow my instructions and rest. Such boss from the quiet girl who sweeps the clinic." There was warmth in his voice despite its weakness. "You've changed, Abigail Winters. In just 2 days, you've become the woman your father always knew you could be." The note, so like Lawrence's earlier comment, brought unexpected tears to Abigail's eyes. "Maybe I'm simply becoming who I was always meant to be," she said soft. "Before fear and grief led me wrong." Thornhill's hand found hers again, his grip stronger than before. "I get that journey all too well. After Elizabeth died, I lost myself in anger and revenge. Building my ranch, getting wealth and power, it was all meant to set me up to ruin Clayton someday. I never thought about what might come after that goal was done." "And now?" Abigail asked, aware that they had moved into ground far more personal than doctor and patient, yet unable to pull back from the closeness of the moment. "Now I find myself thinking about possibilities I'd long since given up." His dark eyes held hers, showing feelings too complex for his weak state to say out loud. "But much depends on the next few hours and days." Before Abigail could answer, the door opened and Morrison came back, his face grave. "The case is gone," he reported, "and the room has been fully searched. Everything of potential proof value has been taken." Thornhill closed his eyes, brief, a mix of letdown and giving up crossing his features. "I feared as much. Clayton's always been thorough in covering his tracks, but not this time." Morrison kept going, a hint of good in his voice because he didn't know about these. He pulled a small package from inside his coat. "Copies of the most bad documents which you apparently gave to the bank manager this morning for safekeeping." Hope came back in Thornhill's eyes. "Wilkins kept them secure in the bank vault itself." Morrison confirmed, along with a sworn statement about today's face-off with Clayton signed by both Wilkins and myself. "The proof against him stays whole, Thornhill. His run only adds the look of guilt to the existing proof of his bad deeds." Relief washed over Thornhill's face. "Then it wasn't all for nothing," he murmured. "Elizabeth's death. Winter's shame these years of planning some justice will come of it after all." "More than some," Morrison assured him. "I've already wired the area authorities with starting info. They'll be waiting for Clayton at the next big station. He won't escape so easy this time." The news should have brought Abigail full good. The man who had ruined her father would finally face results for his actions. Yet a lingering unease stayed a sense that matters had fixed too neatly, too completely. What had he meant about proof of Elizabeth's true condition? And what final act of revenge might he have set in motion before running? As if reading her thoughts, Thornhill squeezed her hand. "You're worried about Clayton's threat against you," he said quiet. "Not for myself," Abigail replied true, "but for others who might be hurt in his try to hit at us. Elena and her baby, Doc Lawrence, the miners who've taken his powder." She paused, then added, "And you, Nathan, your heart attack was suspiciously timed after getting his message." "Nathan," he corrected gentle. "After all we've been through together, I think we can drop formal stuff." The use of his given name felt strangely natural, as if they had known each other far longer than the short days since his arrival in Copper Creek. Nathan, then she agreed with a small smile. But my worry stands. Clayton is dangerous, especially now that he's been shown and has nothing left to lose. All the more reason to make sure he's caught quick, Morrison cut in. I've set for extra wires to be sent to every station along the Eastern Rail Line, alerting authorities to watch for him. And the mining company, Thornhill asked, what of their role in giving out Clayton's formula to the workers? I've started steps to have their operations stopped pending look, Morrison replied. As the biggest landowner in the area, I have some power in such matters. They won't be poisoning any more miners with Clayton's mixes. A knock at the door broke their talk. The hotel clerk entered, bearing a telegram for Thornhill. Just arrived, sir, marked urgent. Thornhill read the message quick, his eyebrows rising in surprise. It seems our worries about Clayton's escape may have been early, he announced. The eastbound train was stopped at Willow Creek Station due to a washed-out bridge. All passengers were taken to the local hotel until fixes can be done, including one Dr. Richard Clayton, who was known by the station master thanks to our wire description. They have him in hold, Thornhill asked, eager. Not formally arrested yet, but under watch, Thornhill clarified. Area authorities have been sent and should arrive by morning. Clayton is trapped until then. The news brought clear relief to the room. Clayton held, the proof against him kept, his plans shown. It was more than Abigail had dared hope for when the day started. Yet a lingering unease remained, a sense that matters had resolved too neatly, too fully. What about the documents Clayton stole from your room? She asked Thornhill. If he's trapped at Willow Creek, where are they now? The question gave both men pause. Thornhill frowned thoughtful. Good point, Miss Winters. If Clayton knew he might be chased, he wouldn't have kept bad proof on him. He must have thrown it away somehow, or hidden it somewhere in town before leaving. Another knock at the door showed Doc Lawrence looking worn out, but happy. Mrs. Mendez is stable, he reported. No more contractions, and her breathing has improved a lot. His gaze settled on Thornhill, taking in his paleness and clear weakness. I see my other patient hasn't done quite as well. Heart attack, Abigail confirmed. I've given nitroglycerin and foxglove tincture according to the way you taught me. His condition has steadied but stays serious. Lawrence moved to the bedside, doing his own quick check. Good work, Abigail, he said finally. You've likely saved his life, but he'll need kept care and total rest for at least a week, possibly longer. I can't stay idle that long, Thornhill protested, weak. The land deal with Morrison, the case against Clayton. Both can go on without your direct part, Morrison cut in firm. I'm perfectly able to finish our business setups while you recover, and the proof against Clayton is already in the hands of the authorities. Listen to them, Nathan, Abigail urged, surprising herself again with the easy use of the given name. Your health must come first now. Everything else you fought for will mean nothing if you're not alive to see it through. Something in her words seemed to reach him, and Thornhill gave in with a reluctant nod. Very well, a week of rest under proper medical watch. His gaze met Abigail's, though I have conditions of my own about that watch. Lawrence raised an eyebrow, glancing between them with sudden getting. I see. Well, as Mr. Thornhill's physician, I could hardly object if he wanted to hire a private nurse for his recovery time, especially one with shown skill in treating his specific condition. I haven't agreed to any such setup, Abigail pointed out, though she couldn't deny the appeal of the idea. And I have other duties. The clinic, Elena's care, both of which can be handled without your constant presence, Lawrence countered. Elena is past the right-now crisis, and I'm perfectly able to run the clinic alone for a few days. I did so for many years before you came, if you recall. Morrison, sensing the personal nature the talk had taken, made a quiet move toward the door. I should see about getting other spots to stay for the night since Mr. Thornhill has claimed my room. We can talk the land deal and other business matters tomorrow when you're feeling stronger. After Morrison's leave, Lawrence finished his check of Thornhill and gave more instructions for his care through the night. I'll come back in the morning, he told Abigail. Send word right away if his condition gets worse, but I think the worst has passed. The next few days will be about rest and recovery. When they were alone again, Thornhill patted the edge of the bed beside him. "Sit, Abigail. You've been on your feet for hours." She did it, suddenly aware of the bone-deep tiredness that had been held back by crisis and need. "It's been a rather wild day," she agreed. "Life-changing, I would say." Thornhill studied her face, his dark eyes serious, despite his weak state for both of us. Yes, Abigail couldn't deny the truth of the note. In the span of a single day, her quiet life had been totally turned over. Her father's name on the path to vindication, the medical education become a possibility rather than a given-up dream. And Clayton, the maker of so much suffering, was finally facing justice for his actions. And then there was Nathan Thornhill himself, a man who had entered her life as a stranger and potential patient, only to become something far more complex and meaningful in an amazingly short time. "What happens now?" she asked quiet. "After Clayton is arrested, after your land deal is done, after your health is back?" "That depends," Thornhill replied, his voice equally soft. "On many things, but maybe most on you." "On me?" Abigail wasn't sure she got it. "Lawrence mentioned the possibility of medical school," Thornhill explained. "Morrison told me he had offered to help make your admission and funding happen." "News travels fast," Abigail noted. "Yes, they made a generous offer. I haven't decided whether to take it." "May I ask what factors you're thinking in that choice?" The question was carefully said, respectful of her own choice, while still showing interest in her thoughts. It was, Abigail realized, typical of how Thornhill had treated her from the moment he knew her skills as an equal deserving of thought, not as a under to be directed or brushed off. "Many things," she admitted. "The chance to do my father's hopes for me, the shot to grow my medical skills formal to help more people more good, the real challenges of being a woman in a field ruled by men." She paused, then added soft and more personal thoughts as well, such as Thornhill, pushed gentle, ties formed here in Copper Creek, people who have come to matter to me. Her gaze met his, showing without words the particular tie she found most hard to think, leaving behind. "It's not a choice to be made fast." "No, it isn't." Thornhill reached for her hand again, his touch warm despite his weak condition. "But there might be another option worth thinking, one that Lawrence and Morrison haven't shown." "What option is that?" "I own big land near Silver City, about a day's ride from my main ranch," Thornhill explained. "The town is growing fast, and a new doctor has recently set up a practice there. A woman physician trained at the same Pennsylvania college Lawrence mentioned." Abigail's pulse quickened at the meaning. "You're suggesting that I might learn with her while thinking formal medical school," Thornhill confirmed. "It would let you expand your medical knowledge under right watch while staying in the area close enough to keep ties that matter to you." His gaze held hers meaningful, including, I hope, a tie with me. The suggestion took Abigail's breath away. It offered a middle path between the stark choices she had thought, giving up her medical wants to stay in familiar spots, or leaving behind everything and everyone she had come to care for in chase of formal training. "You've given this some thought," she noted, trying to take in the meanings. "More than some," Thornhill admitted. "Since the moment I knew not just who you were, but who you could become, who you were meant to be all along." He squeezed her hand gentle. "Your father saw it." "I see it too. A healer with extraordinary gifts, held back only by stuff and her own hesitation to claim her rightful place." Tears welled in Abigail's eyes at the getting and acceptance in his words. For so long she had defined herself by what she had lost: her father, his reputation, her dreams of following in his footsteps. Thornhill was offering her a vision of what she might gain instead. A future built on possibility rather than limit. "I'll think about it," she promised, her voice thick with feeling. "All of it medical school, apprenticeship," and she paused, then finished soft, "and whatever might grow between us given time and chance. That's all I ask." Thornhill's smile was tired but real. "Time and chance. The rest will unfold as it should." As the night deepened around them, Abigail kept her watch at Thornhill's bedside, watching his condition, giving medicine when needed, making sure his comfort in every way she could. It was a role familiar from her years at the clinic, yet changed by the personal link between them, by the shared trials of the day, by the possibilities that had opened before them. Outside, Copper Creek settled into its night rhythms. The distant piano from the saloon, the occasional shout or burst of laughter, the rustle of wind through the cottonwoods that gave the town its name. Soon dawn would break over the eastern mountains, bringing with it Clayton's arrest, the formal clearing of her father's name choices about her future path. But for now, in this quiet room with the man whose life she had helped save, Abigail Winters, found a moment of peace and the guts to embrace whatever tomorrow might bring. Like her father before her, she had observed, interpreted, and finally spoken the truth as she saw it.